And we're here.
Hello, all.
Good evening.
Welcome
to Generational Change.
Monday night live stream. There's been an interesting turn of events that we will get right into. So you're going to have to scroll to because I did not a story time. So guys, the Nevada Dems will not be joining us this evening. And we have a message for the Nevada Dems. So
you want me to put this up?
Well, no. I'll do it, but we need to move along. Here we go.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Well, you sometimes like to control it, so.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to do that. Wrong one. Which one do I do? This one. Yeah. Okay. So everybody needs to see this. So let me be clear that this was the second or third time they kind of messed around with this. So we had invited Judith Whitmer, who was the new chair of the new progressive Nevada Dems. We had invited her to come on a while ago. She had said she was interested, but then ultimately kind of blew us off.
Yeah, this wasn't a one-time thing. This is a three-time thing.
Yeah, it's a three-time thing. So then they passed us off to the vice chair, Jacob Allen, and he was supposed to come on a few different times. I don't even know. Kept jerking us around. Then they finally tell us that they were going to they were going to have their secretary come on, that he was going to come on, and they've known about this for a long time. So today, mind you, this is the message that we get. Hi, John. That's our producer. My apologies for doing this at last minute, but unfortunately, we have to pull Secretary Ade from the show, and we're unable to send a replacement at this time. In doing prep research for this appearance, we found a caricature of Debbie Wasserman Schultz in a video on the homepage of your website, one which could very easily be read as anti-Semitic. This is not an association we feel comfortable with, even if it's mistaken or misinterpreted. We do appreciate your consideration of the Nevada Dems for the opportunity, but we'll be declining from here on out. Thank you. And I would like you to read our response letter, because this is my response to the Nevada Dems.
Dear Nevada Dems, so much for you supposedly being run by progressives, as you're clearly being run by the biggest corporate whore in Congress. Therefore, you are either corporate or feckless, regardless of which. I'm not saying that.
Fuck you.
Sincerely, people fighting for actual progress.
Seriously. So this is how this went, people, and I don't care what anybody tells you. So a couple of days ago, we made a tweet basically calling out Debbie. We did it on the show for using the term mitzvah. And we told her she should go look up tzedakah. And I turned to him and I said, something's going to happen. She's going to pull something. She'll pay us back for this. And you never know where or when, but I knew it was coming. And so this is what happened. So Debbie must have called up Judith and said, oh, Judith, they're so mean to me. You have to see it. It's anti-Semitic. First of all, we now have another feature slide presentation.
This isn't going to work like it did on Nina Turner. No. Let me assure you that.
No, so we're going to move along. So I want everybody to see the meme of which we're speaking of. This is the anti-Semitic meme of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Well, it's a thumbnail for our YouTube clip. So this is, and yes, I did do this. I made that. And I've said it.
It's not the only person you've put double.
No, and so here we go. We are now going to do a tour down generational change memory lane. You want to do it? Because I have a whole presentation. And this, okay, so now you got to do the direction. Okay, here we have, as everyone can see, Governor Ron DeSantis on the bottom left with devil horns. Is Ron DeSantis a Jew?
I'm pretty sure he's Greek Orthodox.
Okay, not a Jew.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Okay, here we see down here, we have Sean Hannity.
Trump's best friend.
Sean Hannity with devil horns. Is Sean Hannity a Jew?
Irish Catholic.
Okay, again, next. Here we have Hillary Clinton with big old devil horns. Is Hillary Clinton a Jew?
She's a Protestant.
See, I'm just not feeling it. Okay, next. Here we have Joe Manchin with devil horns. And yes, I do call it the ugly, but is he a Jew?
I think he's part of the snake handler religion. If I'm not mistaken.
Okay, one of those people.
Just
okay,
but
guys. Not a Jew.
Definitely.
Okay,
definitely.
Next with the devil horns. Next, here we have Bill Gates. And he even gets called the complete POS, which I think is pretty fitting. But as you can see, Bill Gates has the devil horns, and he's not a Jew, right?
Bill Gates definitely doesn't believe in religion. I'm pretty sure of that.
He's not a Jew, though. Like, I don't think anybody would ever say attacking Bill Gates is anti-Semitic.
No.
Okay. Is there more? Wait, let's go. I think there's more. Here we have Elon Musk with devil horns.
He believes in blood diamonds.
Right. Now, what they would say is that this might be anti-Semitic because Lorne Michaels is licking the boots of the devil. I don't know. But Debbie called Judy and said, Judith, they're mean to me. Look at this. It's anti-Semitic. Here we go.
So for the rest of the show tonight,
that's a very smart idea. Thank you.
Jen,
you know what?
We'll wear
and so really, so the fact that, and this is Debbie sending out her little, so she's playing the anti-Semite card on me, which is hilarious. But no, and in fact, what I would love to have time to do is prepare the list of reasons why I do think that she is sort of the spawn of Satan, and not one of those things has to do with her being a Jew. Newsflash to people, I also am of the Jewish faith, and no, not an anti-Semite, but nice try. So screw you, Nevada Dems. Clearly you're not that progressive. I can only hope for Amy Valela's sake that you guys get your head out of your ass enough to help her. So, anyway, that's my message to you, Nevada Dems, and go suckle at the teat of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Bye-bye. So we can move on now.
Whatever the reality is of what actually happened, it's not good. It's
this actually looks really cute on me.
This is an extremely bad look for the Nevada Dems, an organization that is,
sorry.
An organization that's supposed to be representing the Democratic Party in a positive light, because you're supposed to be an organization now that doesn't take corporate special interest money. Yet it seems to me that if your reaction to coming on a podcast that is about supporting your organization and your blueprint and sharing it around the country, and you're going to play the neoliberal card of everybody's an anti-Semite, everybody's a racist, everybody's a sexist, that you have a slight disagreement with, and this is coming out of left field 4 hours before you're scheduled to be on the podcast, I'm not buying it.
That's how we know.
I'm not buying it. You got a phone call from somebody and somebody told you not to come on the show and you listened to them. So as far as I'm concerned, so much for change systemically. You're hurting your chances and you're only further dividing people who have basically given up on the prospect of electoral politics in the Democratic Party. So congratulations. And you know what? I responded to your email. And I gave you an opportunity for 4 hours to get back to us, and you chose to ignore us. And so instead, now you get this. And now everybody's going to know. And I don't feel sorry.
I feel bad for Amy Valela.
You owe this person, who is a second-generation native Jew from North Miami, you owe her a freaking apology if there ever was one. It's not coming, but you still owe it to her. I can't take this nonsense anymore. I don't know who can. It's just out of sight, out of mind.
Well, this is the card that people play when they have no substance. And this is what Debbie does. It's all about identity. It's all about virtue signaling to the Jewish community. And I think it's always been really easy for her because she hasn't really had somebody speaking out against her that is Jewish. And it's just how she gets away with that. But the bigger issue here is beyond her. She's going to do what she's going to do. You know what I mean? I feel like, saying something really bad, but I won't. But so she's going to do what she's going to do. But what's really sick is that the Nevada Dems
played right into
it. They are you guys her bitch? Because I tell you what, nothing progressive about that. Good luck to y'all. I feel bad for Amy Valela because she really believed that there was a substantive change.
And you know what? And we're still going to help Amy.
Yes, we will.
Despite what you guys may be doing to get in the way.
Yeah.
But this just goes to show you how power politics works. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Carol Roth because...
You want to vent?
Well, it's not just about venting.
Need to vent.
It's about talking with somebody who may not line up ideologically, but recognizes the primary substantive issues that we're fighting for that can really unite us, because the type of stuff that's dividing us, it's all stupid stuff.
Right. And it's really frustrating. Like today I found out, I told you, did you know how powerful I was?
Apparently you're very powerful.
So apparently somebody on the Sabby show apparently thinks that that me suggesting that it wasn't a good idea for Nina to come to a Julian Assange telethon in the middle of her election cycle campaign, that is the reason that Nina lost.
I wouldn't even bring it up.
I'm just so powerful.
Yeah. War on small business. And that is the war that we really do face, because I am a small business owner. You've done small business yourself.
I try. I'm not very successful at it. So maybe this will help. I make things like this, but then they sit here as all of these things, but it's inventory that doesn't get sold. So yeah, my small business is here. We're in it, but I would.
This is the beautiful book, The War on Small Business, How the Government Used the Pandemic to Crush the Backbone of America, by Carol Roth. She has some really interesting approval testimonials. One that we are a big fan of, Andrew Grohl, who is an amazing chef in Los Angeles. One that we disagree with vehemently most of the time, Ben Shapiro. And then, of course, you do have Neil Cavuto, who I would say is probably the best person on Fox Business if you have to pick somebody. But yeah, the bottom line is, I've read it, most of it. It's a great book, and I highly recommend it, even if it isn't completely aligned with where you stand ideologically. But I think we're going to have a great conversation here, because this, to me, is one of the most important issues that we face right now. The pandemic, as we know, has been handled terribly in a multitude of different ways, but no more so than many examples as we've seen. This is a pandemic that has benefited corporate special interests at the highest level, and it has decimated small businesses at the working level, and I happen to be a victim of such. So this is going to be a fun topic to talk about. So without further ado, we welcome to Generational Change, Carol Roth.
Hey guys, so great to be with you. And I have to be like the total den mother here and say, Jen, you can't take on inventory. You need to sell first. So create a prototype, sell first, and then fulfill the orders afterwards once you get the cash in. Okay.
But it's art. It's sort of like it comes to me when it comes to me, and I make it, and
make one.
Right. I only do. I only have one of everything. I had an art. I
sell one at a time. Okay.
I'm an Etsy store, so everything is one of a kind. So there is no way to make more than one.
Apparently, my mic is way quieter, so let's just pull this thing right into the middle. Let's bring it into the middle.
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so this is going to be the easiest way for us to do this evening. We have had, listen, we'd love to be working in a studio where, it's got $100,000 in it and every technological advantage you can imagine, but we're not that big yet. We're getting there.
However.
Yeah. Become a Patreon, get a Lulu sticker, get a t-shirt like the one that Jen's wearing. I happen to be dressed in professional attire this evening.
He's having a professional discussion.
Well, absolutely I am. So. This is very important to me. So I wanted to impress Carol. So there you go.
Then you put devil horns on me.
And I wish I would have gotten the memo. I would have dressed up a little bit more, but it's a little late in my day, so I figured I'd be casual.
You're somewhere between he and I.
That's right. That's right.
These are Frida horns. See, they've got devil horns, but black flowers, because I love Frida. So I think of them like Day of the Dead.
Love it.
You happen to have like a personal connection with Carol, or from the same area? I think you had mentioned.
Where? No.
I thought you mentioned something about like.
I don't think so. Where are you from?
I'm from Chicago.
Oh, this is what it was. I know people who graduated from your high school probably around your year.
Interesting. Where'd you go to school?
I'm from down here, but my friend from grad school, because I went to Northwestern for grad school, and my friend there went to Deerfield High, and she's a little bit older, but her younger brother is Ted Bonar. Do you know Ted Bonar?
I know the name for sure.
Do you know O.J. Watley? Do you know the Watleys?
The names are from, I think they're a little bit older than I am, but yeah.
Yeah, but that was it. It was the Deerfield High thing. And I'm like, no, I've not been there. I've been by there, but no.
Just by the way, for anyone who's watching this and doesn't know what we're doing, I heard you talked about the being Jewish before, and I'm Jewish. This is what's called Jewish geography. So all of us know it like somebody in common. It's just sort of how it works.
But what is it? Do you think it's like we say that everybody is 6 degrees of separation, but I always say with Jews, it's 2 at most.
Yeah. At the most, for sure.
At most, especially if it's East Coast Jews. Like then it's like we're almost like we're one step from Amish.
Just like them.
All right. So I think that, and obviously the most important topic in your book, of course, talks about the central versus decentral planning of businesses. That is the order of the day. I think it also speaks a lot to what goes on in regards to the COVID response. Obviously, being in South Florida, as you know, this is a very densely populated area. Most of the Democratic areas of the country tend to be very central planned. The very Republican areas of the country tend to be very decentrally planned. I think that there is a happy medium here that we need to find, because promoting local small businesses is one of the hallmarks that we have been doing ever since the beginning of when Jen ran for Congress, and we've been doing it ever since. I think that promoting local small businesses is immensely important, and it shouldn't be political at all. Unfortunately, it has become a political topic, and I think we have to move as far away from that as we possibly can. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, so if you think about the economy, and I always look at things on sort of a spectrum, and on one side, you have, just like, take it right down the middle. 50% before COVID, just about, of the GDP and the jobs were in small businesses. There were 30.2 million of them, accounting for about half the economy. Highly decentralized, highly free market oriented, freedom, choice, transparency, whatnot. The other half of the economy is in the hands of about 10 to 15,000 big businesses. And so you just kind of think about that balance of power, and why does it look that way? And I contend that that's because of the cronyism that has enabled the tilting of the playing field. And it's on a lot of levels, and I'm sure we'll talk about them. But when you think about supporting a small business and you think about it not being political, I would argue that being free market is the least political thing out there. It is, I define capitalism or free markets as just freedom, choice, transparency, protected by the guardrails of property rights. And so if you want people to make their own decisions and have that decide where the dollars are allocated and how innovations are happening and so on and so forth, that's the philosophy that you support. As you move away from that, you move to a system, and I call it central planning because I don't like to get caught up in the different definitions. I think that's where a lot of this discussion goes awry. I'm more focused on principles than I care about politics or names. So if you want a handful of people to make decisions on behalf of everybody, using force, using coercion, using control, and usually opacity, that moves you more towards central planning. And so I think the people who are supporting the concept of small business and not making it political is very well aligned with the concept of the free markets. And I think that's really where we should all want it to be. We don't want the government to be in cahoots with these big businesses and making regulations that tilt the playing field, but that's what happens every single time. And we've seen it in the financial crisis. We've seen it, obviously in this crisis, and like sort of every place in between. And so that's kind of the way that I sort of come to this discussion.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to recognize, I think we're getting an echo on your side, Carol, so just hit the mute button when we're supposed to, when we're talking.
You think that's it?
I think that's what it is. I could be wrong, but we'll see. Yeah, I think that's it.
No, I can't hear it.
Carol, can you just mute yourself? I think, okay, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
No,
okay,
fine.
so I think, again, reading, I think you've definitely identified the problem. There's no question that corporate special interests, we say this all the time, corporate special interests are what dominates our political sphere. That includes the major corporations basically running the government. And by doing so, you see what's happened with these bailout packages. They don't actually benefit working people. They don't benefit small business owners. We've seen the videos. I know exactly the one that you were referencing in the book about the restaurant owner in Los Angeles that was not able to run their operation, yet a major studio was able to do the whole shebang. It was, I think it was a Spielberg production.
The rules don't apply to those people.
And as it turns out, of course, they were greasing the wheels of Governor Newsom all the way. And that's why they're able to do it. So hook, line, and sinker, it doesn't matter what political party you're in. Corporate special interests are going to find a way to get what they want. It's really understanding who's on the side of working class people and who's on the side of corporate special interests. We really hammer that message home. Where I think we differ is, where are the solutions? What are the best solutions? We're not opposed to capitalism, but I do think that the hybrid systems that you see in other parts of the world execute it much better than ours, because, as you allude to in the book, we are so far into crony capitalism at this point. We have to come up with a solution that doesn't just involve saying, all right, the free market's going to solve the problem. What is your rebuttal to that?
Yeah, so first of all, I always call it cronyism, not crony capitalism, because as I said, capitalism, freedom, choice, and transparency, there is no place for the crony interests to be involved in that. I would also say that if you're looking at this problem of cronyism, the reason why the government and these big businesses are in cahoots together is because the government has the power to be able to make those grants and decisions. You're not going to be able to take that away with more government. The more power the government has, the more purview the government has, of course, they're going to want to control and get more power. So that's why it's easier for them to corral 10,000 big businesses that have the lobbying dollars that are able to support their campaigns. And at the end of the day, it's just human nature. Like if you believe that people are inherently greedy, which by the way, they are, if you believe that people seek out power, which by the way, a lot of people do, the best structure to deal with that is small government. And it's not saying that there's no government involved. It's just saying that we want them to do what they're supposed to do, protect the guardrails of property rights and stay out of the way. Because if you go back to every sort of issue that, again, this is like I'm so excited we're having this conversation because like you said, we're all identifying the same problems with the Federal Reserve and their bailing Wall Street and transferring wealth from Main Street to Wall Street, with these big corporations, with the issues in healthcare, with the issues in education. I will contend that, at scale, and of course we can pick out like a tiny little country like Norway, and we can talk about why Norway is not the United States, but at scale for a country that has 330 million people and is developed, the best way to do that is to have the least amount of government, because if we go to the people who created the problem to try and solve it, we're going to continue to get the same issues. Now, we saw this coming out of the Great Recession financial crisis. John, you might have seen this in the book as I talk about the Dodd-Frank regulation. This is the most frustrating thing ever, and I think we're all probably very much in agreement here. Banks took on too much risk. They basically tanked the economy, not just here in the United States, but on a worldwide basis. It had implications for all of us. And they were told that they were too big to fail. And they got taxpayer dollars to bail them out. And so what was their punishment? Oh, we're going to give you regulation. We're going to regulate you more. The government's going to come in. We're going to regulate you. We're going to give you Dodd-Frank. Well, what did Dodd-Frank do? It killed the formation of community banks. It killed the formation of small business banks. There were a bunch of them that went out of business. So small business lending fell off a cliff. At the same time, then the big businesses or the big banks didn't have as many competitors. They were able to get, at the same time, more free money from the Fed that they pumped into the market. And at the end of the day, they ended up with free reign. So what was meant to reign in the big banks now gave them free reign. So, those are the kinds of things that happen when you say, okay, well, we see that there's a problem. We're going to let the government solve the problem because of this like three-headed monster of big business, big government, and special interests. It never works out. We have no examples in history where it's ever worked out for the little guy.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that one of the more important things that we obviously want to talk about, as you just alluded to, is we do support the Yeah, there's definitely a bad feedback.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm trying to work on that right now. Yeah, Carol, if you could just hit mute again. Yeah, that works. So one of the things that I think is very important to talk about, because I did note it, you didn't talk about it a lot in the book, but you did mention modern monetary theory. And obviously you have your thoughts on that. We do support that concept. I think that there is something to be said for the ability to print money because we are a currency issuer. We're one of, I think, like 13 countries in the world that do it. It's also one of the reasons why, we have a currency that other nations use and we're able to control their markets. That's a whole other layer we don't have to get into here. But the point is, if you do have the ability to print money, and the goal is obviously to control inflation, and if so much of our money is wasted, why not be investing it in areas that would make a lot of sense? See, not everybody is obviously capable of being an entrepreneur, being a small business owner. Maybe for some people, having a federal jobs guarantee does make a lot of sense. And having the ability, especially to work on our infrastructure, which is so devastatingly bad, compare it to any of the other major countries in the world, especially China, we are very far behind. And if we're ever going to compete, having the ability to have the government work on behalf of working people, I think would be important. Obviously, making sure that it's executed correctly is very important. But certainly from the perspective of having a jobs guarantee, especially under circumstance, I think does make sense. How do you feel about that? And would you be agreeable that it would be something that would have to be based on maybe a specific time period, a specific goal in mind? How would you see it?
So let me ask you this, like, what is it that you think the government does well?
That's a good question. The government really doesn't do much well, but there's a big difference. For example, one of the arguments that gets made constantly is, and I would say probably one of the more prominent problems that we do have above everything else is, of course, healthcare. And so when the argument for Medicare for all gets brought up and you speak about it with somebody who, let's say, is on the political right, their attitude is, well, I don't want the government running my healthcare. Well, that's not what Medicare for all is. Medicare for all is government-funded healthcare. We already have it. It's Medicare. The difference is we would now expand it and give it to everybody. I don't want anybody controlling what my doctor is capable of making if the free market dictates that they're the best option that's out there. If you're a great doctor and you have the ability to make $500,000, $1 million a year because you can have a backlog of 3 months deep because every person in, let's say, Broward and Palm Beach County think you're the greatest doctor in Boca Raton, I don't care. Let them make that money. That's their business. What I don't need are for-profit middlemen, the cronyism of capitalism that do not bring any value whatsoever to the table, siphoning 1/3 of the money we put into healthcare into their pockets. If we cut that out, think about the financial freedom and opportunity that small businesses would have by having Medicare for all. We don't want the healthcare that's in Cuba. We don't need socialized medicine in the sense that the government runs everything. What we need is a system where people are able to basically have what they have now without having the for-profit middlemen that are screwing us over. So that, in a way, I think relates to the government funding an operation, not running an operation. That's the distinction that I think we try to be very clear on. And that's kind of where we get bogged down in the minutia of, well, you just want the government to do this and that. No, we really don't. But we also recognize where the government's value really needs to be made.
Yeah, and I think that this is where good intentions and good outcomes completely split. And I think the intention of having everybody have healthcare that is more affordable and certainly better than the current messed up system that we can all agree is just a complete cluster, right? I think that's where we all can agree. Coming out of the last 18 months and thinking that the government's actions in terms of picking winners and losers, the flip-flopping on healthcare, the flip-flopping on mask stance, the flip-flopping on the Trump vaccine bad, the Biden vaccine good, all of these things. And then the funding, the way that they allocate funding. I mean, we saw it in terms of what went to small businesses versus what went to the big guys in terms of the CARES Act, what was called relief. I mean, the fact that we think that the government, even if you believe that they won't get into running it, could then allocate it, or that this wouldn't become politicized, and that our healthcare, the funding for our healthcare could potentially get caught up in a giant partisan debate. Again, I think it's a nice, good intention, but I don't think that the outcome is realistic. Where I think what we could have, I think the problems that we have in healthcare is caused by the government interference in the market. We have nothing that looks like a free market in main healthcare. You have a couple of big guys who, supply the big companies. You have a couple, or one guy that supplies the government. That takes up most of the healthcare. And then you have this kind of weird exchange system in the middle. You have all these rules and regulations that actually prevent sort of free exchange. And the areas in healthcare where there is something that looks more like the free markets, things like elective surgery, we've actually seen much more innovation, and we've seen the prices going down. So if we moved everybody from the government and the business, as well as kind of, all of us who don't want to be beholden, because it's just stupid. We all agree it's stupid that we should be beholden to jobs to get healthcare. If we all moved into a free market system where we actually had free choice, like we do to insure anything else in our lives or to purchase anything else in our lives, that would have all of the good hallmarks of competition, which lowers prices, innovation, and not running it through the government. So I think where we kind of, again, I think we're all hitting around the edges of the same things, but in terms of the intentions versus the likely outcomes based on all of the data and our knowledge of sort of the diseconomies of scale in government itself to execute things appropriately. I mean, it would the system that you're talking about would require having the best, most competent people in government at all times to get it done. And I would just contend that a system for governance does not work well when the requirement is to have the best people, and certainly not the way that we elect people, right? On a popularity contest, it's not like we go through and we find experts and people who really know what it is that they're talking about. So you just look, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on and who you don't like in Congress, just think about those people. Do you really want those people in charge, even if it's just funding healthcare and deciding what things are important? I just feel like there's a better way. But I feel like it's a little off track to our main discussion.
No, I understand that. Well, the reason I don't think it's off track is for this one reason, because I am a small business owner, and I do think that healthcare is one of the biggest expenses that small businesses have to deal with. You know, being responsible for the financial burden of your workers is a very big part of the problem. And so,
and it also makes you anti-competitive with big businesses, because they're obviously able to go in and negotiate these better packages with a handful of companies. That they can go in with one company, and that becomes a barrier for you to finding better employees. So I agree that getting that out of the way would be certainly a better option, and would make things a more even playing field.
Okay, so then let me ask you this. Let's say we were to come to the negotiating table and we were to say, all right, we want to make sure that everybody in this country has health care, and we don't need for-profit middlemen getting in the way of doctors and, you know, nurses. And obviously, you mentioned electives, which is fine. I don't think that everything, I agree with you. I don't think everything needs to be covered. I think the basics need to be covered. I think most people would agree with that. The ability to have a primary care doctor, the ability to go to the hospital in case there's an emergency. You know, if people want to get, you know, different types of elective surgeries and things like that, I think you should have, you know, a free market option if that's what you choose to do. I think that being able to have basically flip the system we have now, which is basically have a public system with a private option, rather than basically a private system with it's not even a public option if you really want to look at it that way. But I do think if we did have a basic system, a government funded system, a single payer system, which is what the overwhelming majority of the rest of the world has, but you were able to have a free market option if you wanted to get even more quality care, I would have no problem with that. And I would think most people would come to the negotiating table. And why? Because you wouldn't have to buy into a private option. You can choose to buy in. That's an economic freedom. But considering, you know, the fact that we're the only country in the world that has medical bankruptcy as an example, you know, these are the types of things that I really do believe we can find the common ground on. Like I said, I don't want the government running healthcare. That's not what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be able to take our tax dollars and work on our behalf. Now, I know you'd make the example of, well, when do they ever do that correctly?
Right. I think that's the fundamental principle that you just really have to kind of get your head wrapped around. Like, a handful of people are never going to work on your behalf. That is just against human nature. The reality is you're going to do a better job advocating for yourself. So where I would be okay, so if we're at the negotiating table, is saying, well, why don't we have a system where, you know, we fund, like, or the government says you need to, instead of like paying into Medicare, you can pay into your own HSA type of account. And again, we kind of bring everybody into the free market so that you have the competition, because one of the things you don't have when you have a single payer system is you don't have any competition. And I don't know anywhere that exists where having a lack of competition breeds innovation, brings down prices, and creates more accessibility. So I think that we want to make sure, like you said, that we don't have this insane system with opacity and with ridiculous costs. But the reason, again, we have that is because it's not capitalism. It's not a free market. We don't have the ability to go and freely exchange. We have a handful of options which are tied to these big anchor entities that are filled with cronyism, not a true free market. And again, healthcare isn't my sort of 100% area of expertise, but I would say Ovik Roy of FreeOp wrote some really great, he studied sort of all the different systems, and he's written some really good literature that kind of compares the benefits, because obviously you want it to be as cheap as possible without sacrificing quality, without sacrificing accessibility. And you can't always get all of those things at the same time. So I think, in terms of, again, the government purview and giving more power to them to control these things is a bit worrisome. Like, I think about Social Security, for example, is a great example. Like, you talk about, you don't want the middleman, but the government becomes the middleman. And that's not a good scenario either. We want to, again, decentralize these things. So for Social Security, if we all agree a social safety net's a good thing, well, instead of me paying in and having the government get that money and then paying it out the door, why couldn't we have a provident fund where they say, okay, you pay in, but you own that money, and maybe the employer contribution goes to fund people who aren't working, and then you actually have the ability to invest it in something instead of it going out the door and being spent on something else. It takes that power away from the government, but it still gets the same objective going. So I feel like that's where we can still solve these problems, but shrink that power and purview of the people who keep telling us that they have our best intentions at heart, but we know human nature, that's just not the case.
And I do know what you're referring to. I know that this is Rand Paul's idea. I don't think it's that far off. I do think that there is some merit to the idea of it. It's kind of like having like a 401k, like healthcare fund, I guess is what you would call it. I think it just really comes down to, like I said, we had a very interesting debate on our show not too long ago on the merits of UBI versus a federal jobs guarantee. And it's amazing how people go back and forth on one idea here, the other idea here. They don't see the importance of actually having multiple ideas on the table. They're very dogmatic, if you will, in what they believe, and thinking that, okay, well, this is, we have the right answer. That side doesn't know what they're talking about. And the way I see it, you have to be able to incorporate all different aspects of a system that can obviously get better. One of the things that we talk about a lot on our show is the fact that progressives and libertarians, while they do have significant differences, there's also a lot of significant things that they agree on. And being able to come to the table like we're trying to do is how we're going to get where we need to go.
No, I completely agree. I think that's been one of the most eye-opening things about writing The War on Small Business and having these discussions, is that there really is not that much land sort of, in between where we are, that we're all trying to address the same issues. We're just coming at it from a different background. And I think that the important sort of differential that I see is having a really deep economic background and kind of being able to follow the trail of intentions versus outcomes, because there are a lot of things that are really good intentions that economically don't produce the outcomes that we're trying to get to. And so if we can all identify what those outcomes are and kind of think strategically, I agree. I think that there's a lot of ground, and I do think that progressives and people who are libertarian or centrist, or like this whole swath of the middle that's considered themselves politically homeless, hat tip to Brent Fedesi, who always talks about it. I do think there's a really great opportunity for us to come together. And now's the time, because the government's done a really great job in dividing us. Instead of us pointing the fingers at them and holding them accountable, we're pointing the fingers at each other when we're the ones that should be coming up with some better solutions. And we may not come up with all the same solutions, but there are certainly places where I feel like, again, small business, I'm pretty sure almost everyone feels like the response and the picking of winners and losers and the telling big businesses that they were essential and small businesses they were non-essential, and putting in trillions of dollars into the market where 7 tech companies gained $3.4 trillion in value, while hundreds of thousands of small businesses were completely screwed over, not because they were too big to fail, not because they had done something wrong, but because the government told them they couldn't open. I mean, they subjugated their property rights. So I feel like there are these areas, and those are the places where we have like the closest alignment, which are kind of the easiest to tackle. We come together, we start doing these small things together, and then we get to know each other. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, and I think that this also, and Jen, if you want to jump in.
I mean, like, I'm so far out of this, only in that, like, to me, we're talking about affordable healthcare, and I just don't think it should be commodified at all. Like, I'm just sitting here in my own place. So I digress. So
I don't either, but I also do believe that you have to, I keep insisting, as I do all the time, that there is a hunger. There is a hunger when it comes to right-wing populism. People are going to paint it with a broad brush and say that everybody's a racist and everybody's this, that, and the other thing. We saw what the gentleman from, I think it was called Kareem Coffee or whatever it was the other day. The guy was on Joe Rogan, and he is as right-wing as it gets. And he basically said, the white supremacy nonsense, get the hell out of our sight, because we don't need any of that. And that's what it comes down to. The economic populism
needs
is
to come
where
together.
This is where we're going to get it right, Carol. This is where we're going to get it right, because when the GOP and the Dems are talking about the culture war, they're not actually talking about things that are going to help us financially, because that's what we need to be focusing on. The second that we talk about economics, this is why I have listen, I disagree with a lot of what Rand Paul has to say, but in terms of the Ron Paul side of libertarian economics, there are a lot of ideas there that are correct. Again, the killer be killed mindset, I do not agree with, because it doesn't work for everybody. But when it comes to government waste, when it comes to corporate waste, things of that nature, progressives agree with that 1,000%.
Agreed.
And filth and corruption and everybody. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot of things that we agree on.
One of the things, my favorite president, I don't mind saying, is Teddy, and I harp on.
I know too much now.
Well, because Roosevelt was the only person who truly ever challenged the real people in power.
Right.
He was an accidental president because of McKinley's assassination. They really only put him there as a stand because they didn't want him running New York. But the point is, he ended up president. He may have been the most popular president ever in terms of what he accomplished in the 7 years he was there. He challenged Rockefeller. He challenged Carnegie. He was really willing to do what was necessary. And the one thing that happened during his administration that has not been used, as far as I can tell since, is the Sherman Antitrust Act. There are so many grounds to break up these monopolies, like Amazon, for example. Amazon does probably more damage, as much as Walmart, to small business America than anybody else. And no one is challenging them. No one is saying, listen, we have it in the law that you're not allowed to be a monopoly. It's not allowed. And yet they are a monopoly. I don't think anybody would doubt that Walmart and Amazon are monopolies in their form of operation, especially in terms of delivery service. There is Amazon and there's nothing else.
They've eaten up a lot of small businesses.
They really have.
Just what that's the truth.
And then the other thing that ends up happening, because I know a lot of people on the right they're certainly not pro-union, or they go as far as being anti-union. But one of the things that ends up happening when you monopolize the economy is workers' rights literally go out the window. You don't have any rights. You basically have us, and that's it. And when there's no competition, you don't have anywhere to go to make a better living. So this is where we really do have to find a way to meet in the middle. And as far as I'm concerned, the corporations at the top that basically are screwing us over on the daily, this is, to me, breaking up the monopolies, I think, is something that progressives and libertarians could come together on in regards to supporting small business. Do you see that as a potential meeting ground, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot to unpack there.
Sorry, I can go on.
I'll do
that.
So, certainly, again, and I think it goes back to the concept of, what is a free market, free choice, transparency. I'm going to keep saying again, the guardrails of property rights, and what is forced coercion, control, a few people making decisions. concentrated power. And I am certainly in favor if somebody gets too big where they're completely dominating, I have no problem in addressing that. The issue is, and I'm a very principled person, is how specifically are you defining that? And where is the line, and how do we keep that principle? Because a lot of the discussion points that I've been having and asking people the questions to define what it is, there's a lot of, oh, well, I know it when I see it, but I can't really define it. And that doesn't work for law. So I think that if we were to come together on something like that, there'd have to be a really clear definition. It's like, at what point is something really a monopoly and truly a competitive threat? And I also think, we like to talk about our rights and we don't like to talk about our responsibilities at all. And there are a lot of things that you could choose to do outside of Amazon that people don't because they find value in Amazon. With my book, The War on Small Business, I've been pushing people to buy it at bookshop.org. You can still buy it online. They will still ship it, so you don't even have to walk to your local small business bookseller. But people like Amazon. And so there are a lot of people like, well, yeah, I get it. That would be nice, but I still bought it at Amazon. So there's the piece of, hey, Amazon does the beauty pageant and they go running around for corporate headquarters and they get special tax breaks and favors and things like that. That kind of stuff we should shut down because we're not controlling that. The government's controlling that. But the stuff that we have control of, I think we need to take a bit of a more active role in terms of capitalism and understanding our role and our responsibility. We can't just demand, well, we have these rights, and these big bad companies, whatnot. So I think that's one issue. I also have an issue in terms of unions. And again, it goes back to the consolidation of power. Because in many of the cases, again, it goes back to intentions versus outcomes. The intention, we want, workers to have rights and whatnot, but the intentions end up being outweighed by what's the outcome. And that is that many of these unions get really big. They end up benefiting the people who are, in the little club, and they don't really do a lot for the people that they are, purporting to help. We see that particularly in the teachers' unions. And so again, I feel like, again, you can advocate for yourself better than somebody can advocate for you. And I believe in a merit system. And if there's, let's say, for a teacher, a really good teacher, like there should be no cap on the pay that they get, and they shouldn't be beholden to somebody else who's flying around on a private jet and saying, oh, we can't go back to school because, whatever
Gee,
science.
I wonder, Carol, who you might be talking about.
This is a hypothetical example, Randy Weingarten.
Well, I will tell you that of all the unions that are out there, and it's the saddest thing because, teachers are the most, along with nurses, are the two most important professions we have. And unfortunately, Randy Weingarten, who's been running the teachers union for, I guess, about 30 years now or something. She is the definition of what's wrong with collective bargaining and what's wrong with unions in general.
We have a lot of knowledge on these issues.
And this goes back to my thoughts again around, how you look at power structures. And I think if you look at the big business and you look at big government, you look at big unions, and you look at what we're talking about, decentralization. Like if you love small business and you love the idea of decentralization, or if you're a crypto person and you like the idea of a decentralized currency, like that's the antithesis of giving these big entities more power. And I promise you, just like study human nature from all of history, and go back to Milton Friedman, who you may or may not like, but like, where are these angels who are going to organize society for us? Like we don't have Mother Teresa's out there. So like, let's solve the same problems that we're talking about. Let's identify the problems, but like, let's maybe just try a potentially different way, or at least kind of talk through like what might be the benefit of doing it in a more decentralized way. Even something like education, even if it's government funded, which isn't like the most kind of like, centrist or fiscally conservative thing, if you didn't have the teachers unions in there, and you had the dollars following the students, which we're seeing a lot of, and you had more competition, and you were empowered as a family to be able to make those choices. And the same thing on the teacher, like with technology, if you were a great teacher and you could broadcast to 1 million students and make $1 million, like, that would be amazing. Like, great teachers should do that, and everyone should have access to it. It shouldn't be based on your zip code. You shouldn't have to move to get like access to the greatest teachers. So I think bringing in some of those free market tenants actually makes it for a stronger opportunity for education. And it's something I think that's been made very clear over the last 16 to 17 months, where we saw the disparity in what happened in private schools versus public schools, and even the shift to some homeschooling because of these kind of core issues.
And I do think that that's a very good point, because one of the things that, you know, we supported Bernie, and one of the things that we noticed when he ran, in particular in 2016 against Hillary, is that when it came to the unions that were basically run by the rank and file, the workers made decisions for themselves. What is in the best interest of us? What's going to work for us? Anytime a union had that leverage, they voted for Bernie. Anytime it was a corporate board, not the rank and file, that made a decision in terms of which, you know, candidate they were going to get behind, they got behind Hillary every time. So as far as we can see, we're identifying the same problem because we see it the same way. And that's the thing about, you know, what happened between Reitz's Priebus and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Reitz's Priebus told the GOP establishment, look, the people want Trump. I am not giving them Rubio, Kasich, or Cruz. If the people want Donald Trump, then that's what they're going to get. And I'm not going to screw our party for the sake of corporate special interests, because our voters will revolt. On the other side, Debbie did what she had to do to screw Bernie, give it to Hillary, and they still lost. And so that is something that I think we can universally get behind. And as you can imagine, you know, we're of the, you know, we love Nina Turner, we love Andrew Yang, we love Bernie, we love non-corporate approaches to economic solutions. We love the idea of having, you know, more of a camaraderie, even with people that we disagree with. We are dead set against the cronyism of politics. If you knew what we thought about people like Debbie and Dick Durbin and Nancy Pelosi, and I could go on, it's the same thing that I'm sure a lot of people feel about the Mitch McConnells of the world, the James Inhofes of the world, the people that are hurting progress. Because there are a lot of innovative ideas out there. You know, that to me, I think, is one of the central focuses that you've seen on the left, this primarying of representatives who are basically, they answer to corporate special interests. They don't answer to their constituents. You could say what you want about, you know, we'll leave AOC out of the discussion, but if you look at a lot of the non-corporate representatives that are on the Democratic side, there's not many of them, but they do answer to their constituents. I'm wondering what your thoughts would be if there was an active rise on the political right to basically push for non-corporate representation and basically fight for the values that you believe in. Because I think if we did see that transpire on the GOP side, we would get to where we need to go a lot faster. Because as far as I can see, that's not really happening right now, but it doesn't mean that it can't.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much in favor of principles over people or party or politics. You know, there are times when somebody who's, you know, not generally aligned with me says something interesting, and it's like, yeah, you know, that's dead right. And I feel like we need more of that. We need more, you know, you mentioned all of these people that you like they're fine as people, but like I need to go through each of their ideas, and we need to kind of talk through the merits of their ideas. And I think unfortunately we have got into this this sort of duopoly. Like, talk about, if you want to break up the biggest duopoly that's out there, it's the Republican Democrat, you know, traditional stronghold. I mean, that is the duopoly. I mean, that's the illusion that we have some sort of a choice, and we don't have a lot of a choice. So, you know, from my standpoint, I'd like to focus more on the principles. And I feel like the principles to avoid the same problems of when people get into power, what happens with the cronyism and the special interests and the cash grabs and all that stuff. Again, I would contend that a smaller government approach, which again is not a non-government approach, but just a smaller with more free market principles, really accomplishes that. And so I'm all for like tearing down the whole current, couple party system that we have. And I think it would be super interesting, like you said, if like the progressives and the libertarians, perhaps, and the politically homeless could find, some way. Again, it's important to listen to constituents, but it's also important to have some reality in terms of perspective of, there are a lot of things that people want that aren't necessarily producing good outcomes, which is why, again, I feel like having the federal government involved in so many things is not sort of the best way to approach that. But again, I feel like there's some interesting kind of melding that could happen there.
I think that the only way that you're going to be able to really get progressives on board with any idea of free marketplace is that healthcare, education, and corrections need to be taken out of the for-profit sector, because those are not things that need to be for profit. There's many other things that are for profit that I think is fine. If somebody invents a widget and wants to rip people off for that widget, have at it, man. Fly around in your corporate jet and have gold fixtures. And yes, I was on a corporate jet with gold fixtures because Stephen Hilbert from Conseco back when I lived in Indianapolis, but I digress. So like, I have no problem with that. And progressives, I don't know. I mean, yes, I've been called a communist by people, but I'm not. I have no problem with capitalism. I just believe that those three areas need not be on our for-profit table. I think there's many other ways for people to make a profit. And especially when we're talking about benefiting small businesses, because right now, all three of those things are not helping small businesses. They're only helping big corporations when you're talking about the profit. So yeah, if those things are taken off the profit, field, then yeah, I think that there's a lot of things we could agree on.
Well, let me push back on that a little bit. I think the corrections one kind of stands on its own. I mean, the government is there to protect our individual rights. Managing the judicial system is something within that. I don't see a lot of sense in terms of that being sort of a for-profit entity. So that's one that's probably like an easy one to get people to agree with how to shift that. Although there would have to be some elements of competition in there, because otherwise you end up with a system like the VA or the TMB or anything else that the government runs. So we'd have to think through, like, how do you make it not, kind of the current crony scenario that's today, but also not a government system either, which is not a good thing. But I don't understand the issue with profits, because there is a inherent driver in terms of the pursuing of profits that is self-regulatory if you have competition. And again, I will contend that the reason why healthcare and education are so messed up is because there's no capitalism, there's no free markets, there's no freedom, choice, or transparency within those. Pursuing a profit or not pursuing a profit is really more about aligning efficiencies. If you think about nonprofit organizations outside of government organizations, just, somebody who's raising money for whatever interest, they're some of the most poorly run organizations that are out there. And what usually ends up happening, because they don't have to answer to customers who are making decisions, again, based on profit margins, they don't have to answer to shareholders, they don't have to worry about it at all, is that they end up wasting so much money on overhead. So they have more bloated salaries, they have ridiculously lavish offices, because they need to spend that money so that they're not showing a profit. And so pursuing profit doesn't make it, it actually makes it more efficient. Having nonprofit often makes it less efficient. So I think that it's not understanding the motives of the profits, and not understanding that some of these things that we're talking about aren't using capitalistic tendencies, and trying to mold it in a fashion that brings freedom, choice, transparency into the process that benefits the outcomes that we all, I'm sure, can agree on.
But what about people that can't afford healthcare or can't afford an education? And, you know, you can make it as competitive as you want, but there's people that are not going to be able to afford that. So when you have a system that's based on profit, it's inherently profitable for there to be people that either don't get healthcare or don't get an education.
Sure, but so that's what I'm talking about, like government guardrails. So like in the terms of education, as I said, like let's just take off the table that government doesn't fund at least early education. We could talk about college, and that's a whole separate thing. But early education, you know, K through 12, I don't think anybody is saying like, no, we should rip that away from government. But what we are saying is that there should be choice. So if you have a government school and you have a for-profit school and you're the family, and we as the government give you dollars, and you say, well, you can use it at the government school that's nonprofit, or you can use it at the for-profit school that's incentivized to do that, and you have the free choice to do that, why wouldn't you want to do that? We've seen some of the, you know, these private schools and their fantastic output because, again, they don't have the same kind of issues that come along with the, you know, government central planning mandates and the bloating of the administration. They actually spend more dollars on the students. They have to, because they have to compete for them. So that bringing that element of competition, that freedom, that choice, it doesn't take any dollars away from anyone. It just brings in more competition to the process. And I guarantee you, especially in underprivileged and underserved areas, they would much rather have the choice on where to go than be stuck with some of the crappy schools that they're in.
They would rather the money be in their public school instead of be going to charter schools that are fly by night. I mean, we have a very different situation here in Florida, so I don't know what it is like where you are, but here we have charter schools that open. They're not accountable to anybody. They make their little profit and they move on their way. And what that does in the meantime is it siphons money out of the public schools that really is where that's needed. And so I think that we have to, you know, take into consideration that, you know, some things might not be best with a profit motive.
Yeah, and I also, and if I could piggyback on that, that's one of the reasons why I've been very adamant that you know, Betsy DeVos was terrible for education in this country in terms of what she was advocating for. And I would say that the one distinct difference that you would have seen if Gillum was governor instead of DeSantis is that Gillum very much was running on the idea of the not allowing the consolidation of power amongst the charter schools, because that's become it's a commodity now. It really is. And the public schools, as I'm sure you're aware, in Florida they're bad. Like they are. And the charter schools, you know, we have one here in Pembroke Pines that you'd like to talk about.
But Pembroke Pines is an anomaly. That's because its charter is with the city, and it is that school is very well cared for, regulated. The teachers are well paid. Like they really are on their game, but it's not a for-profit thing. They don't have shareholders. So, and that is the only charter school, I believe, in Broward that has anywhere near the credential. Like it's the best one, and it's the one with no.
But let's talk about like Chicago. So I live in a district where we have the numbers in the book, but I think it's somewhere around $21,000 that we spend on a student. So it's not like there's a lack of money that's going into the schools. It's been increasing at insane rates. The problem is it's all going into administration, buildings, facilities, not going into the education of students. And so that's what happens when you have the government doing these mandates and then obviously being in bed with these big unions, is there's more money that's pouring in, but there's no accountability because I, as the consumer, don't have a choice. If I'm in this zip code, like that's the school I'm going to, and it's a huge burden to be able to.
If I could ask, Carol, do you live in Cook County? Is that where you live?
I do live in Cook County.
Okay, so you live in the most democratically controlled county in the United States, the most overly regulated, the most like centralized, controlled county in the United States.
And it's horrendous. The outcomes are horrendous here. So the amount of money that we pay for the horrible infrastructure, for the lack of safety, for the poor school outcomes is sort of the bellwether, as you said, for bad outcomes when you have that much power that's concentrated with the government.
We've seen your mayor. So again, we're well aware of just how bad politics is in Chicago, and it is unfortunate because it is a beautiful city and it has a lot to offer. And
it was
yeah,
a beautiful.
Well, and I had an amazing experience in Springfield, just going to visit the land of Lincoln. And, Illinois is a great state. And it is unfortunate that, you do have this overly...
I love Chicago.
Yeah.
I lived in Evanston, but I loved
I mean, again, Evanston, Deerfield, that's not Chicago. I'm talking about the city itself.
But I went there.
I live downtown. So,
yeah.
And so when you see the imbalance that exists in Chicago and you see how bad the South Side and the Southwest Side in particular are, it doesn't need to be that way, but yet it's been that way for a very long time. And I do think, bringing this conversation full circle and the issue at hand that I think is one of the biggest causes of the problems that we have today, particularly when you look at where the biggest spikes of COVID have been and the whole concept of centralized planning versus decentralized planning. It's not that centralized planning doesn't have its merits, but we are over-centralized in way too many places. And because we are so much at each other's throats politically these days, you're finding so many people, especially those who identify as liberal, for example, they're all flocking to the major cities in this country. And we are becoming so overly populated. It is becoming so unbelievably expensive to live there.
There's too many people here.
There are.
There's just too many people here.
And we are literally stuck where we are is right between Fort Lauderdale and Miami. So as you can imagine, there's
just too many people here.
It's overpopulated in the summertime where it's 95 and super humid. So you can imagine what it's like during the holiday season. It's pretty rough down here. And unless we really focus, which I think is the best part of your book, it's the last chapter, guys, just so you know, it's a long one, but it's very important. The difference between centralized planning and decentralized planning. It's one of the reasons why you can go to different parts of the United States, beautiful parts. I happen to be a big fan of North Carolina and Tennessee.
I think I turned you on to that.
I like Tennessee way before I even knew who you were.
It's a North Carolina thing.
But there is something to be said for states that are temperate climate, have a lot to offer, not expensive to live there, and primarily
there's not that many people.
Well, that's true too. And they're decentralized in terms of planning. One of the great things about North Carolina is that it's got a lot of everything. If Asheville's your speed, you go there. If Charlotte's your speed, if Durham's your speed, if even Wilmington is your speed, there's no one city that is so over the top more so than any other. Even
it's spread out better.
It's very well spread out.
That's true.
And the same thing is true of Tennessee, even though, you've got
Nashville, Memphis.
Nashville and Memphis is primarily, especially Memphis is where a lot of people end up going, but there's still Knoxville. There's still these places in between that you can go to where it isn't this major city hub where
we're all on top of each other
where
here.
everybody's
Literally
on top
people
of each
are on top. Literally people. This is when the Surfside condo collapsed, and it's as horrible as that is, I'm thinking, people are not meant to live on top of each other like this.
And this is where the whole concept of decentralization, the main argument of your book, I think is fantastic. I think it is the one that people really need to be focusing on. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, guys, the only way we're going to save ourselves is if progressives and libertarians learn how to do this.
And I don't know why you specified just libertarians.
I do, because
I have Republican friends.
No, it's true, but I'm talking about the political philosophy.
I do have Republican friends.
I know you do. But what I'm saying is that the whole concept of anti-establishment, anti-cronyism, that is embedded in the mindset of progressivism and libertarianism. Yeah. There are stark differences, to be fair, but there are a lot of similarities too. And that's where the importance of what you're writing about, ironically, the way that I discovered you is how one of the ways that we were able to start building our name recognition. And that was going on Tim Pool's show. By doing that was, over 500,000 people saw it.
I think they all called me Karen.
There were a number of guys who did. I'm sure you got it too, Carol. Carol and Karen are not that far from each other anyway.
No, people, funny enough, nobody ever, I think just because of my personality, nobody sort of goes in that direction.
People who know me would never think I'm that either, but yet the Tim Pool audience was a...
I mean, listen, I would just say, is keep your mind open to places where you can bring the principles of capitalism. And again, forget about profit versus not profit. Like, I think you guys are too hung up in that because, as I said, economically there are some good reasons. But think about freedom, choice, and transparency. Like, where are places that we can bring that in, even if the government needs to be involved, and where we can take the government out of being the middleman as well, because the more things that they have their hand in, the worse it is for all of us. And if I'll say one more thing as well, is that, we're talking about empowering the worker right now, and the reason why is bad, but it is what it is. So I'm going to tell you to capitalize on it anyway, is that we have the most worker-friendly job market of all time. Like, this is historic. You will probably never see an opportunity like this again, where there's 10 million jobs available to be filled. People are quitting their existing jobs. So whether you have a job or you're thinking about going into the workforce, now is the time that, even if you like your current job, go out, explore other ones, get other offers. And again, this is where I'm going to get you guys to become a little bit more capitalist oriented. Try to get equity ownership. Ask for stock options. Ask for equity so you can participate in the growth of the companies that you are.
I demand equity of this company right now.
You can have it all.
Let me have the equity.
So that's what I want everyone to do, because if you can go out, even if you love your current job and you've got another offer, you can take that back and use that as negotiating leverage with your current employer. You have no idea what an insanely great job market it is. So like shoot your shot. Like, now's the time. This may never happen again in history.
I'm going to have to go look for something better.
Take a good look, guys. The War on Small Business by Carol Roth. And she is definitely on our side in many ways. Remember,
don't be haters.
Any place but Amazon.
Don't be haters.
Bookshop.org. You can filter a local small business. Yeah.
Go pick it up. It is a very fun read. She goes easy on Bernie. She has some shots at him, but I think she went easy.
You guys can suck it up.
I'm not going to say.
New.
You're going to learn. You want to learn something from the perspective of where about 80% of the landmass in the country is covered in the mindset that people think when it comes to how economics work in the United States. Learn more about the rest of the country.
They can't handle it.
It is very important. Well,
I can't handle it.
The one thing I will say, Carol, on your behalf, I do believe in capitalism. I believe in a hybrid system. But the idea that you're bringing socialism to the United States and that's going to be our economic system, it's not happening. That doesn't mean that the system can't be modified and it can't get better, because the free market is what defines the United States. But let's make it better. Let's make it so that it does work for everybody. Carol, do you have a YouTube channel or anything that you want to plug?
So the best place to find me, and I have a slightly warped sense of humor, so just be forewarned. I'm on Twitter at Carol JS Roth, and that's where I spend most of my time. And I generally like being helpful as well. So if you have a thought, or if I can help provide you with a connection, or just throw out an idea, you can go to carolroth.com and there's a contact form there. Feel free to send me an email anytime and just say, hey, I was thinking about this idea, or I was, thinking about this job or this investment or whatever. And I'm always happy to spare some words for people and try and help, because here at the end of the day, I want people to succeed. This is where we're at. I believe in everyone. I believe everyone has the opportunity to be incredibly successful. And I am a product of that American dream. My dad was an electrician. He would never believe where I am today and where my husband is today. And I want to preserve that opportunity. And like you said, make it better, make it more accessible to everybody. So,
well, Blue Bandit, a good friend of the show. Definitely make sure you pick up a copy of her book. Carol is a fantastic guest, and I think we should definitely have you on again. And I think the next time we should do an economic panel of some kind. I think that would definitely be a way to further this conversation.
It'll be like a whole room of the teacher on Charlie Brown.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
No, it's great. And I would say to you too, if you guys have ideas or things that you want to banter around or connections, I think this is super productive, and we should just figure out how we can take what we have here and harness it and like take back the insanity that's going on around the discussions in our country. So I love the fact that we're able to have this discussion. I really appreciate you.
I'm going to give you a little treat just before you go off the air. I think you're going to appreciate this.
Oh no, wait, who are we getting?
Carol, I just want to let you know that I've read your book. I've got it right here. Here's the book. It's a really,
I didn't think you could
really important. No, I can totally read. And I listen well. You know, I really listen. And I read this book. It's really great. It's almost as good as The Art of the Deal. Not quite as good. Let's be fair. But it's a really incredible book. I recommend you buy it. Go out there. Carol's definitely doing a great job. Tremendous job. Incredible job. Nice to see you.
Bravo. All you didn't do is drop the word China for China. That's the only thing that would have just like taken it to the next level, but like 10 out of 10.
We did a game during the debate between him and Joe Biden with our producers, and every time Joe said, come on, every time Joe said, come on, and every time Trump said China, we had to, I had to smoke a bowl, but like we had this whole thing going here with that. And let me tell you, he said China quite a bit.
He liked to say China. Anyway, thank you guys so much again for hosting.
Thank you, Carol. We look forward to seeing you again sometime. And guys, get the book. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye. I mean, it's a lot of fun. You know, again, these conversations are really not that hard to have. I mean, again, we're not inviting Ben Shapiro. We're not going on Ben Shapiro's show.
Good God.
You know, we're not talking
good God, not that.
You know?
Don't freak me out.
But it is very important that these conversations are had because we are getting somewhere. I really do think that there is a desire to try to find common ground. Yeah. And I think we definitely did find it. We don't agree with her on, I think it's funny how I specifically emphasized with Medicare for All in particular that it's government funded, not government run. And yet she still wanted to circle back to its government run. But no, that's not what we want.
But to her, I think the whole concept of government having any say so whatsoever in pricing.
That's a libertarian mindset.
Yeah. And
But again, that doesn't, you know what? I look at it as a negotiation. All right. So you disagree with this. Let's find common ground over here. This will be where we ultimately end up agreeing. And if you agree that we need to do this for your side, how about give us this on this side?
The whole idea of the commodification of healthcare and education makes me like incensed.
Yeah,
but that's another story.
It's incorrect.
And the other problem is, and I didn't say this to her, well, you know, when she first started and the first words were like, make healthcare affordable for everyone. And I'm thinking, the way you do that is you just give them the healthcare. See, the affordability factor isn't a factor if you just give them the health care.
You know what? We had a great conversation.
Yeah.
She definitely understands where we're coming from. We're not trying to attack her. We're not trying to tell her she's wrong. It's one of those, you will eventually convert people who will understand that the best free market option you have when it comes to healthcare is a single payer universal system. If you want to have a supplemental market for stuff that isn't part of the basics that you need, then that's fine. I don't think anybody would have a problem with that, as long as it isn't something that's required. If it isn't something that's required, then there really shouldn't be a problem there. And that's where you ultimately get that common ground. And I do think that she was right in a number of areas. And again, when it comes to union power,
she got into something. Smell that.
Yeah, you got into something.
What the hell is that?
I don't know, Lou. What have you been up to?
Jesus.
Lou's in trouble. But I think, Lou, you know what? And I think this is a great transition to a great friend of the show. Oh, and if you become a Patreon,
you get the Lulu sticker.
Look at how cute
she is.
You see?
You can't
see,
now you have the mic in the way. Look, did she see?
That looks just like
she's gonna lick that.
Yeah, there she is. Well, she thinks it's a sniffy sticker or one of those things.
Ugh, doesn't smell like you, Lou.
But I think that this is a great transition because we're gonna have a conversation with a friend of the show, friend of Jen's. You two finally were able to meet in not the happiest of circumstances.
No,
but it is what it is.
But we're motivated.
Oh, we're motivated. That wasn't exactly.
We're incensed and motivated, people.
Yeah, no, without question. So Jason Call is part, or I don't know if is he part of BNC again?
I don't even know.
But
we'll
I know
ask him what he's
BNC.
in. He's
candidate for, is it Washington's second?
Where'd he go? He left. He'll be right back.
Oh, I'm sure he'll be right back. Okay.
No, so I think it's not second. Is it second?
I think it is.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
No, I think it is. I always ask, and I'm like such a stoner, and I never remember. But anyway, so I'm so thankful. So Jason Call, who was actually supposed to be coming on Thursday.
We've had to shift our schedule.
We've had to do things, but really what it all comes down to is the Nevada Dems basically not wanting to come on. So
it is number 2. I was right.
Okay. So this is something I'm going to tell Jason because he doesn't know this story, and I think he'll actually be very appreciative of this story.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Of
Yeah,
what
he doesn't
happened.
know.
I don't think he knows what happened. So, all right, bring him on because I need to tell him what happened, and he's probably wondering why I'm wearing devil horns. Other than I am a little bit like satanic.
That
maybe.
is very true. But you guys definitely, like you say, there are certain people that you meet in politics, you can be friendly with and whatnot.
Yeah.
This is definitely somebody you would hang out
Oh yeah.
with.
But
100%.
I've and always thought that even before. Yeah, for sure.
So there you go.
I told him he's like the West Coast me.
Well, on that note, Jason Call, welcome to Generational Change, brother.
Hey, how you guys doing? I'm coming to you
Good.
from a hotel room in Salt Lake City.
Who are you? What are you there for?
I'm here for work. My work sent me off to Salt Lake City to do a few days of stuff because the people in my company in Salt Lake City are behind and they needed me to help them catch up. And so here I am.
You mean your day job?
And I have to. My day job. Yes, my day job. The one that prevents me from being a full-time candidate because I actually have bills to pay. You know how that goes.
Imagine that. Imagine that.
Yeah, right. Oh, I caught the last few minutes of Carol Roth there, and I wanted to say I'm definitely a capitalist as long as the workers own the means of production. So.
Yeah, except for by definition, I'm pretty sure that makes you a socialist, but I digress. So the reason I'm wearing this, I don't know if you noticed, I have horns. Do you see this?
I see your horns.
Okay.
Before you start, the one thing I will say though, and the one thing I will say though, and that Carol did agree on, is that when it comes to unions, she didn't seem to have too much of an issue with the union model that supported Bernie, which is the rank and file gets to the freedom to choose who you want to support. Whereas the unions that were supporting Hillary were all being made decisions at the very top.
Right.
Like the teachers union with Randy Weingarten.
Right.
Perfect example of that. So I do think there is a lot of common ground that we can find. And that's really what we have to work on. And I'm sure you would agree with that. But Jen, you do have
I was going to tell you why I'm wearing the horn. So the reason I asked you to come on tonight is because we were supposed to have on the secretary of the Nevada Dems, who apparently is the blueprint that we're supposed to be following for a progressive takeover of the party. They kind of blew us off twice. Judith Whitmer was supposed to come on at one point. Then it was supposed to be the vice chair. Then they passed us down to the secretary. And then today, about, I don't know, 4 hours before they were supposed to come on, we get a message from them that they are not wanting to affiliate with us because they went to our website and there is a thumbnail. We're going to pull it up again because I think it's really important here. This is why they wouldn't come on. Apparently they didn't like this thumbnail and they don't want to be affiliated with me because it's anti-Semitic. That's anti-Semitic. Now, I, of course, went back through a dozen of our shows where I put devil horns on so many different people that you can't even fathom. I believe she's actually the only Jewish person I have put horns on. But yeah, so this, and I think in my mind, like, it never would have occurred to me being, that I am Jewish, that what we were calling out her had anything to do with that. But yet it doesn't. So why do people think that if you see devil horns that you're anti-Semitic? Maybe they're anti-Semitic for thinking that way in the first place.
I think people are just very, very cautious about, sort of these common tropes that are that have been, I want to say I can see where they're coming from, and I can see where you're coming from, but I can certainly see where they're coming from because.
But that's been on my website for a month, and they waited for 4 hours.
I get it. I get it.
Because Debbie called them because she was pissed about her comment about Nina. See, I knew there would be repercussions for that. Well, it's because I called her out.
The truth is, Debbie's a vampire. I don't know what to say. I mean, she's one of many vampires in Congress. Yeah. So there you go.
That you ultimately run into is when you start throwing around the word anti-Semitic when it has no context to what's being discussed, and you devalue the term. And there has been a significant rise of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a real problem.
Yes, today. And it isn't this.
And they try to stick her in the middle of it because, when you say that, you support the Israeli people, but you don't support the Israeli government, and you support the Palestinian people, but you don't support Hamas, there's like this, no, you have to be all in or nothing. And it's
He
Yep.
knows.
That's
Very
that
black
doesn't-
and white. Yep.
Yeah, that's not the real world. That's not the way this works. You have to be objective, and most people are subjective. And that's the big problem here. But by using that, and like I said, the idea that they would say that to a Jewish person, like, I don't know about you, but to me, you know, Perelman is a pretty Jewy name, if you ask me.
Well, you know, but that's
saying,
neither here nor there. Yeah.
Well, all
really-
I can say for the Nevada Democrats is good job taking over the state party there, and
yes.
and the real test of whether that is actually going to come to fruition is whether Amy Vilela gets elected in
100%.
And if the big money comes out and stomps on her from the Democratic Party, you know, even though because I still think probably in probably in our minds, I look at the Nevada Democrats as still not being quote unquote real Democrats, because, you know, it was a party takeover. So are the good Democrats going to come in and knock Amy out of the race just because they're, you know, terrible people? I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Running cover for Debbie, who apparently called up Judith Whitmer or whoever she called up and told them that they're not that she did not want them
Something
to come.
doesn't smell right.
It isn't them.
Yeah.
They didn't just all of a sudden today come across that and call me out. Like, no.
Well, Jen went right before we left Cleveland. I was in the room with her. Jen put out a tweet basically calling out Debbie about the fact that Debbie was basically trying to dance on Nina's grave. And she did it in such a bush league kind of way, in such a terrible, hang on one second. So anyway, you know, the fact that, and again, because Debbie is such a vindictive person, it doesn't surprise me that she went that route. But the fact that Debbie regarded, first it was two. It was bad enough that she lauded Shontel Brown and was saying, I can't wait to work with Shontel Brown in Congress. This is going to be great. And it's like, Debbie never says that ever about anybody. But the fact that she's doing it as a direct shot to Nina, I thought was bad enough. That was a complete low blow on her part. But that wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. She had to take it a step further. And then she decided to not only say that it was nice that Nina lost, but that it was a mitzvah that Shontel won.
I saw, I think I commented on your Instagram post on that. I was just like, yeah, I mean, establishment.
And so then Jen responds with, you know, celebrating.
No, I just basically said to her, you should look up the word tzedakah, because you obviously don't know what it means. And tzedakah in Judaism, it's charity and philanthropy, and that's what we teach the kids, is you give tzedakah. And so that was what I put out there. And I said to him the minute that tweet went out, I'm like, oh, she's going to come at us for this. She'll do something. And sure enough, that's when, so she must have called up the Nevada Dems and said, hey, it's Debbie. They're mean to me down here. They're anti-Semitic. And so then the Nevada Dems. So I hope for Amy's sake that this is not a foreshadowing of that they're in cahoots with the establishment. But the fact that they're kowtowing to Debbie is not a good sign to me about that.
Yeah, I honestly, I think people are just, because the establishment, I've been repeating this over and over again. The establishment has two things. They have corporate money and they have character assassination. They don't have any policy. Correct. They have corporate money and they have character assassination. So you can be sure that anytime progressive gets anywhere close, that they're going to do, and they did both to Nina, you know, of course. But that's the way they operate. And surprisingly, or maybe not, Rick Larson here in Washington's 2nd District, who I am challenging, he tweeted out about congratulating Shontel Brown. And I was kind of surprised about that. Like, why would you bother? But I think, you know, his team knows that I went out to Cleveland, and, you know, so exactly. I figure that was a dig on their part against
Absolutely.
me. So, you know, whatever. You know, they're petty people when it comes down.
I was just going to say they're very small.
And look at what is happening with climate right now. Look at the UN report that just came out. I am sitting here in Salt Lake City, and I've been through this city a dozen times. And the California wildfire smoke is blowing over here. And we've got beautiful Wasatch Mountains here that are just a couple of miles from downtown Salt Lake. And as I'm driving through to my hotel, you can barely see them. It is so smoggy. My eyes are itchy and burning. And I had lunch with my sister-in-law, happens to live here in Salt Lake City, and so I had a quick lunch with her before I came to the hotel, and she said, "You should have seen it 3 days ago. It was worse than this." And this reminds me right now of when I lived in Cairo, because I lived in Cairo for about 6 months when I don't know if I've told you the story that when George Bush got reelected in 2004, I said, okay, I'm done with America for a little bit. I was just like, I got to get out of here because me being the anti-war person, marching against, invasion of Afghanistan, marching against invasion of Iraq. And I was so frustrated, seeing Colin Powell talk to the United Nations and knowing that he was lying. And then, just people buying into just how bad of a President Bush was, and that we reelected them, and all the shenanigans that went on in Ohio in the 2004 election.
Yeah.
I said, we gotta get out. So I went to teach in Cairo because I was a high school math teacher. And my point in telling you this is I am comparing Salt Lake right now to my Cairo experience in terms of air pollution, because Cairo is filthy. There's a ton of industrial pollution. There's almost no environmental standards whatsoever. I had been there a few weeks, and I was always feeling like, my God, I feel like I've smoked packs a day for my life. And I had a gym membership on top of like a 30-story hotel, and the pyramids are just a few miles away. And on a bad day, I mean, on a good day, they dominate the skyline. I'm absolutely dominant on the skyline. On a bad day, you can't see them at all. And so I'm looking here at the Wasatch Mountains and going, where are they? That's how bad it is here from the wildfires. And you feel it in your eyes and you feel it in your throat already. So, I mean, this is what we're going to be. This is what we're going to be living with. This is what our world is going to be living with. And I say that right now as a follow-up to people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Rick Larson, doing their little happy dance because Nina lost. Yeah. This is your fault. You take money from all of the people that have caused the climate catastrophe that we are in right now. You are as much at fault as the Republicans. You want to turn around and you say, oh, the Republicans are blocking this, Republicans are blocking that. But when it comes to the real tackling of climate change, you're not doing anything at all. I mean, the proposal by the House Transportation Department on they call it the Invest Act is so minimal in terms of scope in what we really need to change our transportation systems in this country. It's laughable. We have to have massive systemic change right now, which will be good for the economy. And yet those dinosaurs, the dinosaurs of industry, and then the dinosaurs of the political system that are holding on to things that are literally killing our people and planet right now. I have such contempt for them. I can't even express it.
Yeah, no, I feel you. And I know that being also on another coast, even though Jason is currently in Salt Lake City, he's Washington, but we have some serious climate issues that are not being addressed. And, for us down here, our entire state, or the south part of our state anyway, is built on limestone. And so when we talk about sea level rise, you have a whole bunch of people that think, oh, that's all right, we'll just build a seawall. And they're not thinking, okay, well, yeah, except for it comes up underneath and it infiltrates our water, it infiltrates our infrastructure. We're going to have issues for fresh water here. And
well, the acidification of the water systems will eat away at the limestone also,
Yeah. Oh, no, we're having a serious problem.
Yeah.
And we also have, when it rains harshly, and there's a lot of parts of Fort Lauderdale where it's sewage in the streets because they're still on septic. So when salt level rises, it doesn't just come up on the beach. I think people think it just comes up on the beach. That's not how this works.
Comes up on your shower. You end up standing in it in your shower.
It's just, well, I'm fortunate where I am is actually not like in the highest point in Broward County. So when you look at the maps of Florida, post the apocalypse, and there's this like ridge that goes down the center, I actually live on that. So like we'll be clinging to life, but I'll be oceanfront. But, you know, we have a problem. And this thing that just happened on our coast with the building in Surfside literally collapsing. And it really is due to saltwater encroachment. And what do you guys see where you are in Washington in terms of like real time problems that are a result of poor infrastructure and climate?
Well, I don't think that we have as many infrastructure issues as you seem to be having. I mean, in my area directly, we're on the Puget Sound, so we're not like direct ocean. We're really pretty mild climate. We don't get like a bunch of ocean spray but you know, the reality is my district has more coastline than I've got the islands in the Puget Sound, and and my district is about 75 miles long. And so we've got probably around 400 miles of coastline. So one of the really alarming things about the UN report that came out is that rising tides are inevitable. Well, that's going to hit my district hard. You know, we have 75 miles worth of coastal communities and farmland that's gonna, you know, it's going to displace people. What are we doing to plan for the inevitable displacement of people that is going to require a very different kind of transportation system that we have right now? And the real answer is virtually nothing. Right. And we have so many options in Washington State. You know, I've got solar panels on my house, so I know solar works here. But we've got, like I said, tons of coast. We can tap into tidal energy. We're sitting on the ring of fire, right? You know, we could tap into geothermal energy. And that's actually one of the things that we are seeing, like a real visual marker for how bad this summer is we are used to seeing, we've got, I think 4 or 5 of the largest volcanoes in the Cascade Range, which goes from British Columbia all the way down to, you know, Mount Shasta in California. We've got 4 or 5 of the largest volcanoes in the Cascade Range, and they're very distinct. Like they're year round, and I've lived in this area for 40 years, and so the shape of those mountains is distinct. We have had so much heat and so much snow melt that it's actually changing weirdly the outline of these mountains because of the snow melt. And then the lower mountains, the ones that are only going up to like 8,000 feet, 10,000 feet, they are virtually devoid of snow, where usually like the Olympic Peninsula where Rebecca Parson is running, you know, yeah, we usually see snowcap on those Olympic mountains year round. Same thing on the Cascades. So I can look east, I can look west, I can see mountains that should have snow on them, and they're virtually devoid of snow right now. There was actually satellite imagery from the snow melt from Mount Rainier showing all of the debris that the abnormal snow melt has brought down through the Tacoma area, that Puyallup Valley and Tacoma area. You can see the impact of that snow melt from satellite photos. It's really alarming, you know, and representatives like Rick Larson are completely performative. I mean, he's chair of the aviation committee. He won't address the fact that we need to be scaling back air travel. I mean, there is no clean air travel. You know, I got on an airplane to come here, but you know, the reality is we need to start really investing in rail and having it be able to get across the country quickly with high-speed rail and eliminate air travel. He's never going to do that because he's fully funded by the aviation industry and is chair of, Boeing is right there in my district. You know, and Boeing, I mean, just talk about the labor issues with Boeing. Oh. You know, they have squeezed so much money out of the state of Washington, and they still picked up and took jobs to South Carolina, to a right to work state where they could, you know, pay people less wages and not have them be union. So, you know, it's God, we got
remember,
so much-
corporations are people, Jason.
Corporations are people.
don't you
We're
know
a
that
right
now?
to work state though, so we're used to that. We don't.
Sure are.
We're
Yeah.
so, like our workers are just screwed.
Yeah, that was a conversation we really didn't get a chance to get into with Carol. If we have her on again, I would definitely bring that up. But the fact that right to work is basically, I mean, it's bad enough that we have a monopolization of, industry in the United States. You add right to work laws on top of it, you don't have collective bargaining, you have collective begging, as a friend of ours likes to say.
Yeah.
You really
Our
don't have the
firefighter
opportunity.
friend calls it collective begging.
And that's what it is. You don't really have the opportunity to really build on, a worker, movement, so to speak. I mean, obviously we're supporters, and we really appreciate what Dan Price has done to emphasize, and the argument that one would make about Dan Price in the way that, he decided to compensate his workers is, well, that's the free market, and he chose to do that. He wasn't forced to do that, but he shouldn't have to do that.
No.
That's not the way that the economic system needs to be designed. You need to have workers' rights. You need to be able to negotiate. You need to be able to, again, elect non-corporate representatives into elected office. Corporate special interest money, Democrats or Republicans, it doesn't matter. That is the dividing issue of our time. That is why we don't have the things that we desperately need or
100%.
want, for that matter. And so with that said,
we have our producer being quite a fatalist. John, we're working to do something about
don't
that
worry,
here.
John.
Don't
we'll
worry,
find
John.
you. We'll put you on blue.
You know what?
I'm
I'm not even going to disagree with John, and yet we're still going to try, right?
Yes,
I mean,
because what else do you do? What else do we do?
What else do you? And it's amazing to me that people at this point have not realized that this sort of hyper-capitalism is not sustainable. It's not a sustainable economy in any way except for the rich, and even the very wealthy, once we're all like, begging for scraps and can't afford to feed our kids, which so many of us are right now, and the jobs are no longer there for us, what are the rich going to do? I mean, what they're going to die out just as quickly as we do. They're just going to be behind their compound walls for a few years longer, but eventually that's going to run out for them too. And so really the only way forward is sustainability and cooperation and making sure that everybody's needs are met. I don't understand any philosophy that doesn't have those ends as its goal, regardless of like the details, the nuances of how you get to it. But if that goal isn't that everybody's needs are met so that we have a sustainable future, I can't fathom that mindset.
Yeah, again, you're sounding a little socialist, Jason. You might want to check that out. You might want to have a doctor look at that for you.
Just a little bit.
The more pushing towards it in that direction. I mean, even somebody like our previous guest who is very much free market, this, that, and the other thing, we were even pulling out of her like, yeah, maybe you're right on some of these
No,
things.
I was biting my tongue for like the first half. As soon as she started talking about, making it competitive so everyone can afford healthcare, and I'm thinking, see, the whole point is that you shouldn't have to pay for healthcare.
And the other thing that I tried to emphasize to her is that, I'm a small business owner, but not everybody is capable of being an entrepreneur.
No.
There is this mindset that a lot of them get into, this idea that everybody is capable of being financially independent. It's not possible.
No.
It's not human nature.
They just give you the opportunity. As long as you all have the same opportunity, then that's fine. But the problem is there needs to be other avenues for people. But
You know what would be a great start to the opportunity for everybody for entrepreneurship? How about eliminating poverty, making sure everybody has health care, and making sure everybody isn't saddled with educational debt and they can get the education they need? Let's start with those three things and then see how entrepreneurship happens.
That's what I think too.
So that sounds like universal healthcare, universal education, and UBI. So it basically puts all three things together, and it works.
And I would throw housing into the mix. Although if you're giving people healthcare and a living wage, they can probably afford housing. That's why in fact, you wouldn't have to have affordable housing if you just paid people. If people could afford to live, then you wouldn't need to have special housing. They would just have houses.
And like I said, I mean, Carol was right on a number of things, but it's the conclusion, it's the solutions. It's the solutions to the problems that there is this mindset that the libertarian free market capitalist thinks is the market will always solve the problem. And the answer to that is no, it can't. It can't solve every problem. It's not possible because human nature doesn't beget something like that. But it is important to recognize that we can bring these ideas together. And as long as it's based on non-corporate representation, that you're actually answering to the people, in this case of Washington's 2nd District, that is important. So when you ran in the previous election cycle against Rick Larson, you were one of, I want to say...
And for people who don't know, Rick Larson is basically his Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Yeah, pretty much.
I guess it's 6-1.
So the same deal. Bought by corporate special interests through and through.
And yet a sitting Democrat in a blue district.
And a beautiful state, mind you.
Yeah.
A state that really... So Washington is one of those states that really, it is a decentralized planned state. The fact that it's so corporatized and entrenched, and again, a lot of that has to do with Seattle.
All right.
But my point is, your representative is not representing the people.
No.
And so when you ran in the previous election, I think you were one of, was it 3 or 4 candidates in the primary?
There were actually 8 total candidates filed for that seat, but Rick and I were the only filed Democrats. The other 6 were Republicans.
You have open primary?
We have open primary. We have top 2 primary, just like California.
So you have the jungle primaries like California does.
Exactly. And that should work for us. That really should work for us, because the reality of my district is that Rick Larson has whipped the whipped the Republican in the race for the last 5 cycles going. The only time he ever came close to being unseated by a Republican was in 2010, and that was that wave of across the country. Democrats lost their seat, and he came close to losing them, and then he popped right back to beating the Republicans by a 2-1 margin. So there's really no chance that this district is going to go to a Republican. And so it's really, I've been selling to the people of this district that get me on the ballot next to Rick. If I'm on the ballot next to Rick Larson, or even if, they say, oh, well, the argument in many other states is, well, we can't vote for a progressive because we know this person has proven to be able to beat Republicans. And we don't know if we put a progressive on the ballot that they are going to be able to beat a Republican.
That's talking point 3.1b. Go on.
Yep.
I digress.
If I was on the ballot next to a Republican, I would win that seat. If Rick's on the ballot next to a Republican, he's going to win that seat. So the best scenario for this district is for me and Rick to go head to head in the general. And then he is going to have to answer for 20 years of shitty votes that we have in a spreadsheet. And I'm going to say, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? Because his voting record is awful. It is anti-progressive, and it is an absolute embarrassment that for the first year in 20 years, he is running on being a bold FDR progressive. Why is he doing that? Because I was the guy who said I was the FDR progressive in the last cycle. It's infuriating, and it's also embarrassing. But that, again, that's what the establishment does. They don't have any ideas of their own except to hold on to power. Power for the purpose of power for the purpose of enriching their corporate donors so that they can stay in power, but nothing actually about progress.
And I really think that that's where the issue of language becomes so important when you're running for office, because to me, I think the word progressive has been co-opted.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's not what it used to be. Even Debbie used that.
Debbie said she was progressive.
Even Debbie said that, and we know that she's yes. That's the perfect reaction, because
said that in
Debbie
her TV ad.
Debbie really is the poster child for corporate Democrats. She really is.
Oh
and the idea that you would use that just goes to show you that it's basically become a very watered down term. But the term that isn't watered down is non-corporate, because that's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah,
you can't lie about that, and that I think, and between you and Rick, that is what will define your next race. So, what's going to be different this time around compared to last time?
Well, one, we're going to be able to go out there and knock doors, and having the dynamics of our race last time around was the whole country shut down 5 days before, or I would say 5 days after Bernie or sorry, not Bernie, but the Washington State had their presidential primary on March 10th. And then the whole country closed down on March 15th. And everybody was freaked out about going outside and, knocking on doors. And no, we shouldn't do that. In retrospect, I think it would have been 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, because we would have gotten in trouble if we'd gone knocking doors. And then it certainly hurt us not to get out there, because we did have volunteers who wanted to go do that for us. And we said, man, this is going to look real bad. And they're going to use it to hammer us if they would have do this. So this year, we still have a huge volunteer corps who is ready to go out and hit those doors and walk that turf, just like we did in Cleveland for Nina. I spent 8 days out there knocking doors, pretty much morning, noon, and night. And if we had more people on the ground there, 3,000 votes, we could have covered that territory. We could have flipped those votes, and I won't say any more about that. But we do need to get out on the streets, and that is something that we're going to have. And we have the name recognition. We have a lot of county and legislative district chairs who are in support of my campaign, publicly supporting it. So we're going to get our local endorsements. We are probably still not going to get union endorsements. And Jen and I know you have talked about that
We've talked about that, yeah.
So that's still going to be a fight. But I think we can double our primary vote, and I think we can be on the ballot next to Rick. And again, you're exactly right, Pete. The message: corporate versus non-corporate, and this district is a safe blue seat. There is no. I had people telling me after the primary last year, well, if I'd known you were going to do so well, I would have voted for you. And you just want to go,
Woulda, shoulda, coulda.
That's why they do it.
That's why AOC. This is why I tried to tell people. Alex's win over Crowley was an anomaly of all-time anomalies. Almost nobody ever wins their first race. Yeah. It's almost impossible, because building name recognition is hard enough, and then you have to deal with all the dirty tricks that the party is going to do to stymie you. And this is Patty Murray's state. This is a state that you have to deal. And who's the other senator? Why am I blanking on her name?
Cantwell, who basically bought that seat.
Didn't we mock her?
Yes, we did.
She was one of our. She was a bootlicker one week, wasn't she? She was one of our. She was a bootlicker of the week.
For such a state,
I have no doubt. I have no doubt about that.
and Washington is such a great state, and the fact that it has been so corporate captured, and again, I said, a lot of that just has to do with Seattle and what's happened with
Dr. Evil.
Seattle has the only progressive rep. Pramila Jayapal is the only progressive rep, and Seattle has Shama Sawant on their city council, who did absolutely just bold buster move where they're trying to recall her, and she actually went out and gathered 6 signatures for her own recall petition and said, "All right, bitches, let's put this thing on the ballot. Let's do it." And she got the signatures, and now they're fighting. Now they're trying voter suppression because they're saying, "Oh, well, that's not enough signatures now." So there's a whole bunch of shenanigans going on.
You saw what, Jay?
Do you see what's happening
Jason,
in Buffalo?
With India, they're doing the same thing.
Yes, they're doing the mayor out there, and we'll talk more about that particular race later.
It's what they're trying to do is just get rid of the position. They're like, okay, we're not going to, she's going to win the mayor. So what we'll do is we'll create a city manager position and take away all the duties of mayor, and thereby she won't really have a job. So they're really
is the guy running the write-in campaign though? Is the former mayor?
He's still in. Yes.
So he's doing that also. So they're trying a multi-pronged approach to get her
They need X amount of votes to create the position of city manager. Yep. And so they're trying to put somebody in power, a non-elected person that would supersede the elected mayor.
How do you get the public to see these shenanigans for what they are? How do you do that? It's so maddening that you can't just say, "Hey, check this thing out," and everybody goes, "Oh man, that's some real bullshit. That's no good." Right. And then they say, "Of course we got to support India. I mean, she won the primary." Yeah. So it's ridiculous. But I was going to say about Washington, I tell people that the people in Washington are, progressive. They have done elected Pramila in the 7th district in Seattle, elected Shama Sawant, maybe moving towards electing another socialist city council member, Nikita Oliver, and that would be fantastic because she would be a solid ally for Shama Sawant on that city council. But 6 of the 7 Democrats at the congressional level are this new Democrat coalition. You know, Rick Larson, Kim Schreier, and Susan DelBene, who's the 12th richest member of Congress, and Derek Kilmer, who is the chair of the New Democrats, or was the chair. Susan DelBene is the new chair. Newly elected Marilyn Strickland in the 10th district. They are all this new Democrat coalition, and these Democrats have no idea of the history of their own party. The New Democrats were born out of the Third Way Democrats, and the Third Way Democrats were seeded by the frickin' Koch brothers, for Christ's sake, because they wanted a coalition within the Democratic Party that would fight for these free trade deals. You know, and that's all that and that's exactly where Rick Larson stands. Rick Larson is a huge free trade. He wants to open up China to American companies. You know, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the economy for the average American. He wants to build, you know, capital for his corporate donors.
But
and
yet
so
he will get the
obvious.
union endorsement. But he'll get the union endorsements.
Of course he will. Of course he will. You know, and I was just reminded of when I ran for in New Mexico back in 2008. I ran for state Senate seat. I wasn't in New Mexico very long. It's kind of my second home. But I ran for state Senate seat, and I went and did the union interview for AFSCME, right? And the current governor of New Mexico, Michelle Lujan Grisham, also ran, and then the current senator one of the senators from New Mexico, Martin Heinrich, that was when he ended up being elected in 2008 for the Albuquerque area. But the AFSCME union president told me after my interview, I really liked everything you said. I wish our politics could be like that, but you're not going to win the race, and we can't endorse you because of it. That was it. He said, I feel badly about it because I think the things that you are saying are the direction that we need to go. And yet the reality of union politics is we can't endorse you. You know,
Yeah,
We've heard that many times.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The one thing about unions is that, especially ones that do have some type of rank and file control, is that they will endorse if they think you have a financial path to victory. That's basically what they base it on. Money is a very big thing with unions. You know, for example, if Jen were to run again, the teachers union is never going to endorse her because Randy Weingarten has a very close relationship with Wasserman Schultz, and that's where it begins. That's where it ends. But with a number of other unions, that isn't necessarily the case. I want to give you a couple of bills that I think are very important.
Yeah, we're working on some stuff here for our firefighters.
We are huge supporters of the firefighters. I don't believe Larson is on these bills. If you want to check them out,
I'm taking notes.
Yep, HR 2586, HR 2499, and Senate Bill 1116. These are basically bills to improve the health benefits
for
of
firefighters.
But because we need to improve the health of firefighters.
Because these I've said it before. I know that like firefighters, when they go in to negotiate with their collective begging session, they actually have a list of cancers that are covered and cancers that aren't. And the thing about firefighters is that they're subjected to so many different chemicals. So to do that is just ridiculous in and of itself. So, but if you get this type of cancer, we're not covering that. And so these are the kinds of things that our firefighters are dealing with. But when you had said something before about, oh, now your congressperson is signing on to something because he feels like he needs to because of you, that is progress. So we had the same thing because now Debbie just signed on to
one of the two bills.
One of those two bills, which she would have never, except for we have multiple times been mentioning the plight of the firefighters. Yeah,
it's almost like we think that our phone is tapped of some kind.
Well, no, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, because it's getting to the point now where, like, even when we talk about something that is Debbie related in any way that might make her look bad, she immediately finds a way to get involved in some way.
And
like
that's positive, though. I mean, if she signs on to the firefighter bill, that's a good thing.
You know, I'm not going to mention the person's name, but they have said that your elected representatives should be scared to death of you. They should, because this is you are being an elected representative is a privilege. It's not a right. You are in a very fortunate position in society. The only person I've ever heard say that is Ro Khanna. He's actually been very adamant about the fact that it is of immense privilege to be a congressional representative and the power that comes with that. And I think he gets it. And he's not perfect. He makes mistakes, but overall, he's a good representative.
Yeah,
and
Ro's a good guy.
And there's not a lot of them. But the fact that he was willing to say that, and the fact that so many of our representatives think that they are entitled to keep their power, and that when they see challengers coming their way, especially when it's within their own party, and especially on the Democratic side, they really do get their panties in a bunch. They really think, well, that's Debbie's seat.
Right. When we told people, I said, I'm running for Congress. Oh, great. What seat? 23. That's Debbie's seat.
Yeah, they really do see it that way. And that's the mindset. That's the mindset of what we're trying to change here. And I'm sure you have been aware of all the ridiculous infighting that's been going on. We were very adamant about the fact that, I don't think we as a movement did enough for Nina. I think that the real definitive difference between what Chantel's side did and what Nina's side did, Chantel was part of the Democratic establishment, and they treated that race like it was the only race that mattered.
Because it was to them.
And they treated it like we cannot, under any circumstances, allow Nina to get in there. And the non-corporate left allowed that to slip through. Now, that doesn't mean that Nina might not run again, because the next election is only 8 months away. But the idea—
She hasn't decided.
Yeah, but the idea that we're ever going to get anywhere if we don't find a way to come together and put our differences aside, not corporate representation, corporate special interests will always unite to crush us when we get close. We have to figure out that even if you can't let, perfect be the enemy of good? Is that
better be the enemy of good?
We can't allow that to happen. And so for people like you, people like Amy Villela, people like Michaela Wilkes, there are a lot of good people.
There's a lot of good people
for office.
And by all means, people, check out our interviews with many candidates.
1,000%. And Jason, it's been a real pleasure having you on. If there's any last thoughts, guys, remember, call for Congress. Better call Jason. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know it's just a great play on words and all, but phone bankers, text bankers, if you're in the Pacific Northwest, highly recommend getting involved if you can canvass. Like you said, that's going to be a big thing.
He needs money. And as I always tell you guys, make a monthly.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I cannot stress enough every time I get the opportunity to say, I want to have like this drive for progressive where I say, can you take $50? Can you set $50 aside? Pick your 10 favorite progressive candidates, donate $5 a month each to them. And if we could get 1 million progressives in this country to set $50 aside and give $5 a month to 10 candidates, people like me would have the money that we need to be quote unquote viable. But I'll tell you right now, fundraising sucks. And as you know, Jen, you got to spend, like, for somebody who works, I got teens, I work, and finding the time to do sort of the consultant wisdom of you've got to be on the phones for hours.
I don't do call time. I don't do call time.
You know what?
I'm not doing it.
I have people telling me constantly, but honestly, I can sit on the phones for 8 hours and get nothing out of it at all. And yet it is something that supposedly is where the money comes from. I would like to find a different way to fund campaigns where we really are going to the working class and saying, look, you know what? You want somebody to represent you, and I know it's a matter of privilege for me to even say, can you come up with that money to spread around to a few candidates? But unless we get people and Pete, what you're saying about having that sort of solidarity on the non-corporate left, so many on the non-corporate left right now are completely turning away from electoral politics. They're like, it's never going to work. I'm giving up. I'm running away. I'll never vote for another Democrat. I saw John in the comments say, if Nina had run as an independent, she'd have gone nowhere at all.
No, he was saying that people said that. He was saying people said that.
Yeah.
The problem.
That's what I know what he's saying, and he's right.
Yeah.
And I can't win my district as an independent.
Same.
You can't.
Nope.
You know,
You don't have the infrastructure in place. It's not
No.
possible.
There's not enough
No.
of a demographic for it, and you can't do it. You just can't. People don't understand.
On top of everything else, there is a psychological warfare that goes on with the average voter. If they don't think you can win, they're not going to vote for you.
Right.
There's just that factor.
Well, here's what I want to say. 35,000 people almost thought I could win last year. I need to double that. And I need to get on the ballot. I need to hold Rick Larson accountable to his shitty 20-year record, something he has never had to answer for in his life because he's never had a progressive on the ballot next to him. And I will hold on up all of the things that he has voted on and saying these are not democratic principles. I can go to our party platform and tell you, you are not a good Democrat, because of the way you vote. And we need to have a way to expose that to people. By the way, I'll leave with this. My website, callforcongress.com. If you go to Rick's Receipts, there's a tab on there that is called Rick's Receipts. I have the best opposition research in the country. We have dug up all of the FEC filings, all of the votes. We built narratives around the money he's taken, and we need more progressives to do that. We need more progressives who are running for Congress to go for the throat against these corporate establishment Democrats. And the reason we have to do that is because they are doing nothing for our future.
I agree. We just talked about that. Like the best strategy for people that are that we're considered left is to out-dem the Dems. And the way we think about it really from a labor perspective, from working values perspective, and be like, that's what we're supposed to be doing. And we talk about that all the time.
Yes.
You have to basically take the title of Dem away from them and put it where it belongs, which is on people that are representing regular people and labor.
And we could do it.
That's what we talk about all the time. We have to claim it.
We have a lot of.
We have to reclaim that.
We've got a lot of roadblocks here in South Florida for a number of reasons. But the truth of the matter is, if we really had a financial operation that could compete at least reasonably with somebody like Debbie, the ammunition is there. Just like with a guy like Rick Larson, the ammunition is there. You just need to be able to build this coalition and recognize that change can happen. It just doesn't happen, unfortunately, fast enough. But unfortunately, there is also that component of independent media that profits off of fatalism. And there's a number of them that do it. And they basically tell you.
I get people being upset with the Democratic Party. I get it. I get how upset and frustrated. I get all of that. And yet the system is what the system is. And you can't, the best way, honest to God, the best way to break down that system is to get inside it. You get inside it and you hold space and you slow down the bad shit and you start building coalitions towards the good shit,
That's what
but
we
you
think.
can't do it from the outside. And outside groups are fine. Keep doing your outside groups, but stop telling the people who are trying to work on the inside that they're bad and they're part of the problem.
And the one last thing that I will mention, and this is the reason why the segment of the left, especially the ones who are harping on this third-party strategy, this is what I would tell them. For anybody who is trying to project and say that we've done everything we can to change the Democratic Party, it's not true. The Tea Party, when they changed the GOP, they didn't just elect congressional representatives. They were all committee precinct leaders. They got the school board. They got the city and county commission. And then they got representatives elected and basically told them, you do what we say or your ass is out. And that's how this works.
And I'm telling you, it starts on that state party level. I was not a member of the Washington State Democrat Central Committee for 4 years, starting in 2016, because I'm a pretty face. We organized locally. We filled those PCO seats. We took over county chairships. We took over state committee seats. We just didn't do it enough. We got whipped at the state level because we were only a third of it. All right. So you're not a majority. Okay. Being in the minority sucks. Okay. What are we going to do to be in the majority? We come back at it harder next time, and then we're in the majority, and then we own the state party, and then we can do the things that we want to do. But when people get defeated, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm tired of that. It's too much work." Then you're that's not going to be an avenue. I mean, we have to have people who are willing to do it for the long haul.
And for those people who want to run for independent seats, here's what I'll tell you. The only way you're going to accomplish that, building that infrastructure, is challenging seats that have no challenge. So if it's a red seat that doesn't have a challenge on the blue side, or a blue seat that doesn't have a challenge on the red side, that's what you focus on. You try to focus on running as an independent in a district that has a red and a blue running, you are wasting time and wasting money. Stop doing it because you're going nowhere. And anybody who's encouraging you to do it, they're a grifter. You heard me say it.
Grifter.
That's
Grifter's
what they are.
gonna grift.
Apparently you're a grifter too.
I'm a
but what the
grifter
hell do I
too.
know, right? Yeah, apparently Jen's a grifter, and Jen is also responsible for Nina losing her
Did you know
seat.
that? I'm responsible for Nina losing her seat because I suggested during my Julian Assange telethon that I didn't reach out to Nina because I didn't think that that would be a good strategy during her campaign, would be doing a telethon for Julian Assange. That's all I said. I didn't say I spoke to her. I didn't say I advised her. But meanwhile, today, some numbnut on Sabby's show was sitting there saying that, yeah, well, JenPerelman told Nina not to go to the Assange telethon. No, that's not what I said.
Well, that's the same thing with the Medicare for all, you know?
It's the type of toxicity that unfortunately has seeped its way in, where it becomes this sort of Debbie Downer type situation. You take out a 10-second soundbite out of a 5-hour telethon, and that is the only thing that you're focusing on. As far as I'm concerned, that just proves that you're not a serious person.
No.
You're not serious about actual change.
Seriously, that was one blip in a 5-hour thing, and they latched on that. We need
to become a much more serious movement. We have to be.
I say that with devil horns on my head. You put there, quite honestly.
Well,
we need to be very serious, people.
It's true.
Yes.
It's true. You know, there we go. So
we will definitely have you back again. We're definitely going to look to do more candidate panels. I think that is very important.
Yes.
We were definitely, we did a thing recently with Mike Figueredo, as you know, of the Humanist Report. And I think that more of these group discussions, I think, are going to be very powerful. Guys, call for Congress. Check it out. Jason is definitely one of the good ones.
Yeah.
You definitely want to give him some help. He needs it.
Jason.
And we'll be seeing you soon, my friend.
Thanks, Jason.
Take care.
So again, it
was great. And it was great that he could come on and fill in where the Nevada Dems drop us.
No, absolutely. And again, I think it was terribly uncalled for on their part. The fact that it was all done at the last minute, it's just, but that's when they got the phone call. That's when they got the phone call from Debbie. They weren't necessarily going to cancel us until she called them. The fact that she doesn't think that we are aware of this is hilarious to me. I can't think of any. It's very poor form. Nevada Dems. Very bad form. And we support what you're doing.
Yeah, that's the ironic part.
The worst part is that we were advocating for you guys.
Yeah,
we weren't bashing you. We weren't trying to tell you that you were wrong.
No.
We thought that you guys have the path, and maybe you do. But you know what?
Not with her.
Send a smoke signal. Let us know that it's not what you think. That we actually don't have a choice. Because Debbie's friends with our current representative, and she's going to see to it that representative screws us over even more than we've already been screwed. Make it so that we understand. Instead, you come off like we're bad people.
Because it was anti-Semitic.
I mean, you're really barking up the wrong tree.
You know what it reminds me of? The Seinfeld, where with Putty, when she's like, "You think I'm going to hell?"
It's the devil horns.
It's the devil horn.
We have one final topic to cover this evening.
Guys,
of course,
we do
it's
have
focus on Florida. And of course, we do have to address Governor DeSantis because he just doesn't
do
stop.
You like that picture?
Yeah. Well, putting a mask on his face, I thought was even funny.
That one.
Hey, Joe, mine's this.
It's a pissing match. What else do you make of that? That's a pissing match.
And we didn't even get a chance to cover this, but apparently DeSantis put a word out that he's now gonna, I think it's sue people if they require masks.
I don't know.
It's
guys.
No, hold on.
All right, but we can talk. I'm just going to talk about this first story. Okay, right. So Florida counties mandate masks for students, which is true. Our large counties have mandated masks for students, basically sticking it to governor. And we've said this many times for people who don't know.
Yeah.
Florida is very similar to Texas like this. We are a very, very county-run state. So even though we don't like the big bad DeSantis telling us what to do, a lot of our counties, and generally I would assume it's the blue counties, are basically doing their own thing anyway. So rest assured, our kids will be having a mask mandate. Our school board has already put that in place. They're not following Governor DeSantis on this. So he, of course, is going to counter that with whatever this new thing is, with him being able to sue people.
So Governor DeSantis' office is threatening to, well, they haven't done it yet, but again, even the idea, they're threatening to withhold salaries of superintendents and school board members who implement mask mandates. First of all, how does he even have the authority to do something?
Well, I don't know that he doesn't. Ultimately, that's where the school funds come from, is from Tallahassee, which is why our school system sucks, by the way. So if he's going to be dangling funds overheads, he should at least be dangling more. But yeah, so our school system, I think we're like 48th out of 50. I do.
Yeah, we are very low.
We're like
45th or something.
It's bad.
We're in the bottom 5.
And well, no. And if you were to look at where we are in proportion to how wealthy our state is, we've got to be the worst. Because the other states that are below us are poor states. Well, if you were to look at states that were wealthy like we are, they are not where we are on the education scale. That's what's embarrassing.
And
people.
so, the thing about Florida, and that's why we had the story, Florida counties mandate masks for students, find way around governor's order. This is a county-strong state. We like to emphasize that a lot. This is a state where you have the most powerful elected body is the county commission. And so a lot of county commissioners tend to be in office for a very long time.
Very long time.
Kind of like it is here in Broward. And they really do have somewhat of executive authority over Tallahassee. And that's something that I think is very important.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, and again, I don't know the full extent of this. I don't know why DeSantis wants to go to war for this type of issue. I think this is absolutely insane.
He's running for president,
Yeah,
and he's trying to stand out, and he's trying to make himself look big and brave and bold and the maverick. He's speaking up. He's fighting back. He's posturing. That's all it is. He's like a male peacock, like preening.
I can't really see him doing it. I think they would call his bluff. If he actually went through with that, I think that would hurt him big time.
It might, but right now he's just making a power move on that.
100%. And again, it's just he really doesn't step in doo-doo. He really doesn't.
That's pretty good.
And as bad as he can be, I'm looking for that moment where he just completely makes a huge misstep and opens it up for like a Chris or a Nikki Fried.
It's not going to happen.
But that isn't really happening. And so he may threaten that he's going to do this, but I actually have to see him go through.
Right. I don't think he would do it. But talk about this story. So I always love the New York Post
Everybody
stories.
is assuming that it is going to be Biden versus DeSantis in 24. They kind of see that that's where the tea leaves are going. Lulu is back for a third time, this little munchkin princess. Hi, sweetie pumpkin. And so, unfortunately, this is not Biden's game. He has no way. This ain't.
But say what happened in the story. So what was the original thing between Joe and Ron here?
So President Biden was questioned by the press about DeSantis's maverick approach to dealing with the COVID crisis that's going on. And rather than actually have an intelligent response, which is what the president is supposed to have, he basically pulled a Trumpian move and said, Governor, who? And this is not smart.
No,
because the one
Joe.
thing that DeSantis is very good at is counterpunching. He's very good at it.
He's like Trump.
And in this instance, he said, well, what else has he forgotten? And this is that works.
I don't know if people can see my graphic, but it really, to me, this is just a pissing match, like an ego pissing match. So
Biden will not win a pissing match with DeSantis. Not a chance. This is much worse than fighting with Trump. Because Trump looks like a buffoon when he does it.
Ron doesn't.
DeSantis ain't no fool. This guy is as sharp as a tack, and it is a huge miscalculation. I hope Biden's team wises him up. He gets a little hip to the.
Do you see the picture
deal.
I used of Joe? I thought that was the funniest.
Well,
picture.
that is kind of what his reaction.
He's like a deer in headlights,
Right.
huh?
Yeah. Let's do some.
Some people say, I found this picture of Ron DeSantis with his hands like he's measuring something. So I just wrote, "Hey Joe, mine is this big." because these guys are having such a little war.
Look, here are the facts, man. You know, that governor disengaged, whatever the hell his name is, you know, he wasn't really smart, man. He thought he knew what he was talking about, but he's not really helping. Oh man,
just go to sleep, Joe.
He's not helping people.
You need a nap, Joe.
We got to close down the state of Florida, you know, because they're not doing it right.
No, we're not doing it right.
No, we're definitely not doing it right. And so we're going to do a good plan. We got a great plan.
You should not have a plan, Joe.
No, we have a great plan.
No plan.
It's a really great plan. And so get your head out of your ears, man.
Oh my God.
It's going to save us all the trouble.
All right.
All this trouble.
We're just losing people by the second.
We are
So let's
losing
just
people.
finish our.
But DeSantis, the disengagement, man, he don't stand a chance against the other Biden, you know? Whatever.
Yeah, where people are dropping.
And that's kind of
flies.
what he would. Why do you say that?
Because it is.
That
I'm
is not
looking
true.
at the numbers.
That's not true. We were
Okay.
already dropping for a while. That'll just convince them to all leave. So, unfortunately, we do have a serious red tide problem in the state of Florida, and it's only going to get worse. But in this case, it looks like they're trying to build drone technology to deal with the red tide.
So-
I got a better idea. How about we stop having big sugar dominate our agricultural industry?
That's
That's just an idea.
It's a suggestion.
That might actually help. I'm just saying.
But then, how would the Florida Democratic Party have any money without big sugar? I guess they still have Michael Bloomberg. They always have Michael Bloomberg.
And that's very interesting that Jason has done so much Oppo research on Rick Larson. We were briefly doing some Oppo research on Debbie the other day.
Yeah, it ain't pretty, people.
And just the last election cycle alone, she's taken $60,000 in campaign money just from big sugar.
Just from big
Just
sugar.
from big sugar. So again,
but it's like if you guys go to opensecrets.org, and when you go into where they get their money from, and you can look at PACs based on industry, and then within industry you get specific companies within the PACs. So $60,000 is just from one segment of one industry of one PAC. And we're like unraveling this is just crazy. And
it's
from
a
big
terrible
sugar.
onion, and it really, really sucks.
But the truth is, Big Sugar, just so people don't know, the two big sponsors of our state Democratic Party are Big Sugar and Walmart. And that's who the Democratic Party in Florida and apparently now Michael Bloomberg bought the party from them. So I don't know who's in charge of it now, other than the Republican who they put in the chairmanship.
We were actually planning on going to the Blue Gala. We weren't going to pay for the dinner, but we would have went there to network, but it has been canceled. And so
it was?
Yeah, they canceled it today.
Oh, that's unfortunate. What a shame. Not.
You know, again,
I can't see. The problem is, and I've said this, I will never pay any money to them. The one
thing that I will say, and this is about, the mask mandate. We support vaccines, we support masks, but remember this: you can only blame DeSantis for so much before it looks like you're just making it political. The majority of the outbreaks, if not all of the outbreaks that have happened in the state of Florida, they're all happening in blue counties. And so
that's interesting.
And why is that? Because that's where the overwhelming majority of the populations are centered. Nothing is worse than Orange County, which is where Orlando is, which is where Disney is. If Disney is open, and we all know Disney ain't answering to nobody but corporate special interests, because they are the corporate special interests.
Disney doesn't answer to anybody but Disney.
Disney is the most visited place in the world. That's why it's called Disney World. When you have hundreds of thousands of people, and remember, they're coming from all over the world.
Oh, they do. And they bring all their viruses with them.
How do you think this is spreading? When you have
Disney,
when you have people that are coming down to the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area that are coming down from all parts of the state and all parts of the country and all parts of the world, on top of being an excessively densely populated area, you're going to have the same problem that you dealt with in New York, the same problem you dealt with in Los Angeles, the same problem you deal with in Chicago.
And it isn't all because of Ron DeSantis, as much as people would like to say that.
And again, do I think DeSantis is aiding and abetting the circumstance? Of course he is, because he's making it political. But to say that that's the sole reason why this is happening is incorrect.
Well, and then that would also see, I've been wanting to see numbers on this for a long time. And I don't know if anybody has been looking at these numbers, But I really want to see a compare and contrast between a red and a blue state with per capita outcomes. And I know you can't really do it. Like, for example, California had like the complete shutdown. Okay.
Right.
And we didn't have a shutdown, not really. And so what are the outcomes per capita? And you also have to take into consideration, and I've said it before, that Florida also is home to excessively vulnerable populations when you're talking about COVID. We have the largest like elderly population. Like there are certain things that make us more susceptible to COVID, regardless of what the rules are. But I really would like to see a compare and contrast between a state that didn't shut down and a state that did, because from what it looks like to me, I really don't see the difference.
And one of the reasons why we are such strong advocates for the PRO Act is because we are a right to work state, and a state that is as big as ours and is so densely populated, because let's face it, so much, I don't know what the exact numbers are in terms of our population, but if you go all the way to the tip of the panhandle by Destin and you come all the way down to Key West and all the way back up towards Jacksonville, it's probably 80% of the state population lives within probably a 5 to 10 mile radius of the ocean front.
Yeah, no, that's
or the
true.
Gulf front.
That's
and
true.
so when
Waterfront,
everybody is all clustered together, with the exception of Central Florida I-4 where Orlando is, most of the state just resides along the coastline. And when you have so many people living on top of each other, you're going to have the spread of viruses and disease. These things will happen. COVID is just one example of that. And so having a mask mandate indoors, we don't have a problem with that.
No.
But you can only go so far. You can't, you're basically looking at a situation where you want authoritarianism.
Well, that's the whole point about like this whole day. It's like, it's not just disaster capitalism, because it isn't just people that are profiting off of it. It's people are gaining power off of it. And whenever there's a situation where people are afraid is when they're most willing to relinquish their rights. And that's something that I'm always very cautious of. I don't mind there being a mask mandate for inside. And the truth is, for me personally, I hate wearing a mask. I call it a face hat because it keeps the heat on your face like a hat keeps the heat on your head. And I freaking hate it. I run warm anyway. And I hate wearing a mask. I do it. But what's happening is I just go out infinitely less. I don't go places. And I'm fine with that. Fortunately, I'm a hermit.
And John brings up a good point. It's like, yeah, but what is DeSantis's motivation by saying that, well, now I'm going to punish you if you decide that you want to have mask mandates indoors?
No, I know what his punish. I know why. The motivation is it makes him look strong. It keeps the attention on him. He looks authoritative, and that's what people want in a leader. And that he's running for president. So that's what he's doing. He's being the maverick. He's just getting news. He's being different. He's being difficult. He's just keeping his name current. That's it. Notice how there's constantly, and I've been hearing national people be talking about Ron DeSantis. That's the point, people.
It's all about name recognition. And at the end of the day, we fully support the county's decisions. And again, this is a blue county, red county
I assure you people,
That's
our county is having a mask mandate, at least for the schools.
Yeah,
no
one said we support what we're doing here in Broward and Miami-Dade. It's absolutely ludicrous what he's trying to do. And of course, like you said, this is all politics, and it shouldn't be. It should be about protecting people's lives. And truth be told,
talk about that more. You didn't really talk about it because I didn't. You forward me articles. I assume you read them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so again, just bringing the conversation back because we're basically done for the evening. But this idea that how are we going to deal with the primary problems that we have? Environmental issues dominate Florida in many ways. Part of the reason why COVID is such a problem.
Yes.
If we don't deal with our environmental surroundings, remember, viruses spread pretty easily in warm conditions. Just saying. And so if you're only going to make it more easier for these types of things to happen, environmental destruction becomes a front and center problem. Red tide is killing our sea life.
Which also, by the way, people, has a very big impact on our tourism, which is our #1 industry here. Nobody wants to go to a beach town that is full of dead fish.
No.
They just don't. So this is something that isn't just an environmental issue. It's an economic issue. This is a livelihood problem. There's people whose entire livelihoods are in places that require there to be tourists in order for them to make any money.
Yeah, and this is again just another example of, you have the ability to make a massive change very easily, but corporate special interests are what is dominating this discussion.
How do the drones work is the bigger question.
I don't know. No one's actually. This is just a pitched idea.
Oh, okay.
This isn't something that's actually.
But
been
I'm
fully
just curious
executed.
what they're saying the drones would do and how that would, like, what do drones have to do with helping with the red tide?
I am assuming that it's kind of like the technology you see that basically you put in the water. It's like a suction cup that sucks up the plastic and the dirt and things like that. And this would sort of be a similar idea behind a drone that would deal with the red tide and the dead fish. I hate even thinking about that.
I don't know how a drone helps with this. If anybody knows. Well, the truth is I didn't read it because I thought you read it.
Well, that's what I'm explaining. I'm saying that this is just a novel concept. It's not something that's been executed as
all right.
yet.
Well, maybe what they should try doing is stop poisoning the water first.
Yeah, that would help. And as long as we have
Why don't we stop
representatives that are knee deep with big sugar and different parts of the agriculture, big ag, that's what we're dealing with here.
So, and this was interesting because I didn't know that that was something that was so rare, but this gets to another issue. So this is a story that says what kind of sea monster was caught near the Kennedy Space Center. And we often see these kinds of stories here where there's some unusual critter discovered for the first time. And at first you think, wow, that's really cool. Look, it's a sawfish. It was a sawfish. We've seen sawfish before. But what I think is that it's a bad thing. And this is why. Because when you're seeing things that you don't often see before, it's because they're migrating because they can't find food where they're supposed to be. When you see animals and critters and it's like, oh, cool, a new species. No, it's not a new species. It's a species that you've never seen before because you didn't need to see it before. But now you're seeing it because it has to come to shallower waters or warmer waters or whatever it is because their food source is depleting. So when I see things like this, it's actually upsetting to me. If I see a bunch of osprey, and like we got osprey here, they're amazing. I'm a very big fan of raptors. And when I see a bunch of birds that I don't normally see, I start thinking, okay, so where did we screw their habitat? Where did we tear down? What did we demolish that is now making them be where they're not supposed to be? So that's what I think of when I see a fish. We don't say fish out of water, but a fish in the wrong water or where they're not seen. That's because we've screwed up where they're supposed to be. And to me, it's just symbolic of what we're talking about, which is the climate crisis.
That's exactly
why.
And I am still a very big advocate, and I'm going to be working on this. We really need to build the sunrise movement in the state of Florida. To me, that's really where it's at. And we can have discussions about what actually goes on Capitol Hill. We all know that there's a difference between Sunrise National and the Sunrise local and state chapters. But I really do believe that the future lies with a non-corporate, nonpartisan movement that is focused solely on the task at hand, which is the environment and the environment.
Labor.
And
like
does.
Those are the two. Yeah.
But it covers everything. The whole concept behind the Sunrise movement is to advocate for the Green New Deal, which is a jobs program, a clean energy jobs program and infrastructure program. And it is also about reducing our carbon footprint, making life habitable on this peninsula for however long as possible. But if we are looking at a situation in the next 2 to 3 decades where life is simply uninhabitable especially in Southeast Florida, I mean, that's what's coming. It really is. This is serious, extremely serious.
Yeah.
And when we have the mayor of Fort Lauderdale thinking that they could even entertain the idea of an underground tunnel for, let's face it, it's a rich people's project.
For rich people to
who
go
don't
from
want to sit in
downtown to the
traffic,
beach.
who don't want to sit in traffic. That's really all it
They
is.
take their little underground pod over there. Don't mind the sewage in the streets that everyone else is dealing with. But
Elon Musk, I guarantee you that if you wanted to build a high-speed rail system throughout the state of Florida, how about building a high-speed rail system that goes from Miami to New York? I guarantee you it would be $10 billion, something in that range. You wipe your ass with that money now.
Well, see, that's what's so interesting. So they come up with all these, they're having a space war, which is really a penis war. Let's be real, people. And so it's whether it's Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or Richard Branson, whoever it is, it's like, mine is bigger than yours. And my understanding is that we're actually going to be bailing out Jeff Bezos from his plan, not being the one that got the contract. But they're sitting there planning all these things about he's flying into space. And yet we can't get from here to Orlando on high-speed rail yet.
No, we can't.
So I don't know where they're running to, but we need transportation here.
Yeah, we can't rely on this idea that somehow our elected representatives are what's going to do the job. No, electing representative is important, but an outside strategy is very important. And one of the things that we are focused on and working on is the October 15th general strike.
Yes.
Because we really do need to build this non-corporate, nonpartisan labor movement. That's the future. because like the conversation we had with Carol Roth, it is based on non-corporate, non-partisan labor. Supporting small business is supporting labor.
Yeah.
Now, she may not be all the way where we are, but let's say she's 60% of where we are.
We're still talking about commodifying healthcare. So she kind of lost me on the commodification of healthcare.
Well, again, that's not something that you can't necessarily lose her on, because I think she can be worked on that issue. I think a lot of people can.
They're very anti-government handling anything.
Okay, let them continue with that charade. As far as I'm concerned, if we can find common ground, you work where the common ground is. You don't just say, well, that's it, I don't want to deal with her. No, you work where you can make impact. And in this case, we really can make an impact. We're going to make an impact tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to be working a beach cleanup and back to school backpack giveaway.
We should also say what's coming up this week, but I actually don't have my phone in here. I came in here without my phone for some reason, so I don't have the calendar on me, but I do know on Thursday.
Yes, on Thursday.
What do we have on Thursday?
Well, Thursday, we've got two very important panels. Well, it's actually a panel and a guest afterwards. So the first panel is going to have two guests. It's going to have friend of the show and former BNC slate mate Shahid Buttar, who is somebody who ran, as you know, against Nancy Pelosi in California's 12th district. But as it turns out, his campaign, which did have quite a bit of momentum and was raising good money, got sabotaged along the way. He was Me Too'd, essentially. And as it turns out, one of the ladies who was propositioned to do it is actually spilling the beans now, that this was an inside job.
And what sucks about this, though, is that for real people that are victims, this is one of those things that now people have to be wondering when somebody comes forward with an accurate story. Well, are they a plant? Was this a sabotage? Like this is the kind of crap. And really, I don't think this happens on the right.
I think the problem is that the right hasn't attempted yet. And that's what'll be more interesting, as I did allude to in the discussion, and Carol was in agreement on this, that the people on the right, on the populist right, they need to be pushing for non-corporate representation in Congress. They need to be primarying their own representatives.
But most of them don't do that.
That has to change. And if that changes, I really think the coalition's going to build very quickly, because it's our side basically fighting this uphill battle. It's like the fronts of a war. But if the other side starts coming in, you start closing the walls in on all of them.
And also who we're having on Thursday, would you look up the name of his new book? I forget the name of his new book. John had sent us the thing about his new book.
We're also having Josh
Hamilton,
friend of the show.
Josh from It's the Gist is the name of his show. He lives in Ireland. He's a UK person.
He's in Ireland.
Please don't do that.
I'm sorry, I can't help it.
Please don't do that.
No, I have to do it.
So we'll be having Shahid Buttar, and what's the woman's name? Do you remember?
Gloria Berry.
Talking about that. And then we're going to be speaking with Josh Hamilton about his new book, which is called...
It is called, I don't know if this is the exact name.
Well, what did you say?
It's called The Cult of Woke Idea Viruses and Renewing Our Institutions.
Interesting. But Josh is really cool. We've had him on before. He's the person who came on to talk about Brexit and his book on that. So guys, check that out on Thursday. He's really fun. I could talk to him for like hours.
And that's one of the things that we did identify this evening that I thought was very, very important. Is this idea of when the culture war becomes the primary topic of conversation, that's a safe play. That means you're not talking about bread and butter issues that actually will help everyday people. If you're not talking about economics, if you're not talking about healthcare, if you're not talking about the environment, and you're not talking about ending the wars.
And if all you're doing is coming after me for thinking it wasn't a good idea for Nina to be on my Assange telethon.
Listen,
you need to get a life. Get a life.
Leave it alone.
I can't.
And so, you want to run for office, you better learn to leave it alone.
I don't want to leave it alone.
And so, and his book is called To the Moon.
Oh,
that is the name of the book, and that deals with, it's about meme stocks, and it's dealing with like Doggy Coin and Bitcoin and things like that. And so, I think it is important to recognize sort of where the economy may be going as well. Like I said, having these important discussions has an inherent value. It really does. We can't box ourselves in and think, oh, well, this person's not enough progressive for me, or is not enough woke for me.
It's just constant litmus tests, constant nitpicking and battling.
Corporate special interests. And let me say this to a person who will not be named. Screw you if you think that electing representatives who don't take corporate special interest money makes them corrupt. It doesn't. Unless you're on Capitol Hill and you know what they deal with every day with 420 some odd other representatives who are bought and paid for by the system and will throw you and everybody else and their mother under the bus to keep their position there.
I'm not even sure which person you're talking about. You'll have to let me know.
The one at the top of the mountain.
Oh.
And so this is the problem. And like I was saying before, we were saying before with Jason, if people in left independent media are constantly going to tell people that what they're doing is a dead end and a failure, and why do it?
Or say, don't give money to them. Don't give money to that. You know what? If you don't want to be within the electoral system and it doesn't work for
that's
you,
fine.
then step aside. But
don't shame other people who want to believe in something, who want to try.
It's like, this is the system we have. You guys are working with a system you would like to see. And that is nice. You can have your whatever party you want to have and go do whatever you want to do. And that's really nice. But, and I would really like to quote my friend Tim Black, because I agree with him 1,000% on pretty much every single thing he said. People are dying and they don't have time for a bunch of people sitting in their whatever houses that they're in and do whatever they are to be sitting and nitpicking about something that they say they don't even think works. If electoral politics doesn't work, then stay out of it.
We have a general strike coming up. Start planning for that.
Yeah, maybe do something productive.
Everybody work together. Focus on that. And we'll fight right there with you. And if you don't agree, and if you don't agree with electoral politics, don't Nina Turner, you throw her under the bus because she wasn't far enough the way you wanted her.
She didn't go to your event in Columbus.
She's able to raise $6 million because she's able to have relationships with people across the entire political spectrum. As I say about every other representative, the second they stop talking about the things that really matter, then you can hit them for it. They may not be fighting at the level that you want them to, but my goodness, there are people who want to cast Cori Bush out like she doesn't do anything.
This is the best we've got, people. So you know what?
It's either this or nothing. So you decide.
No, they're obviously much happier with Chantel Brown because these are people that would rather stick it to people trying to work and do what we're trying to do. They are okay with the people of Cleveland dying because they don't have what they need. They're okay with that because it's sticking it to us. Well, Nina should have done this and Nina should have done that. John, she should have come to my march.
John, Jen and I talked about this the other day and we agree. There could be issues that you have with Breonna Joy Gray, but the one thing we agreed upon 1,000%, this is a Black community issue and we are staying out of it. And that's it. That is something that is between Bree and Tim. That is a completely separate issue from the principles of what Tim was talking about.
He was right on.
That the disintegration of this movement in such a short period of time. Listen, is it possible?
Because we didn't all see the same thing on Force the Vote. And the fact that they keep going back to these same things and just stifling
How about
progress.
The fact that you've got people on that are getting clicks on their pages, putting Jen's name in their mouth, talking about the fact about something that happened with Nina 6 months ago?
Yeah.
And
that's the reason she lost. They need to get a life. But the thing, it's so incredibly frustrating to me because they're so selfish. Like these people are willing to throw. I was actually listening to some other buffoon today.
I want to address this real quick. This has nothing to do with donating to Nina. That it had nothing to do with money whatsoever.
If you don't want to give money or you don't want to support her, stay out of it. But to sit there and work against it, are you kidding me?
Or if she needed help, there's always, phone banking, there's text banking. If you happen to be within a reasonable distance of Cleveland, there's canvassing.
Or stay out of it.
Or just boost on social media. There's always ways to help if you can't give money. Always. I mean, you
don't go out of your way to crap on it. But I find that the people that spend most of their time doing that have no ideas of how to do anything. And so they have to sit around and crap on everyone else's ideas. But the thing about what Tim said that really stood out to me is apparently he got a message from someone who we know who it is, and I need not say who that is, who needs to get an emotional support animal. But something to the extent of you telling Tim that he's dividing us. And his answer was, yo, we're already divided. You people are throwing Nina Turner under the bus, and she's the best chance that the people of Cleveland have to get anything. And you're willing to throw her under the bus for your own little righteous indignation. You grow up. You people grow up. And if you don't like electoral politics, stay out of it.
And that's fine.
And here's the thing, what Tim said, you guys are not on our team. I reject, you know what? I don't even want to be called progressive. I don't want to be called left. I'm just me. Okay. I care about justice. I care about people, non-corporate, but yeah. And it's like, if you guys want to own the term left, you've got it. I don't want any part of you. You are not on my team. Anybody who is throwing Nina Turner under the bus and now sitting there saying, well, yeah, she should have expected this. Of course they're going to bring out the big money. Yeah, of course they do, you dumbass. That's the whole point
on top
of not adding to it.
On top of everything else, you have got somebody who I will not name because they don't deserve to have their name mentioned.
No, most of them
don't.
But
the idea that you felt that your importance to Nina was such that if she doesn't show up for a Medicare for All march, that immediately negates getting support, and that your impact would have made the difference in the race simply because it wasn't this give and take. I simply can't with some people. I just don't get it.
She actually said, she's like, well, you support me, I support you. Get the fuck over yourself. You are not in the same league as her. No one owes you anything. And with the way you guys act, nobody wants to work with you. Move on. And let the grown-ups do some stuff. Seriously.
I will say this. Last thing. Did Nina make mistakes? Absolutely, she did. And you know what?
Absolutely.
The biggest mistake they made was not anticipating just how much filthy money was going to get shoved into that race at the last minute.
And even if we take the filthy money off the table, I have no problem saying that they made mistakes on their field game. They absolutely did. I think that they did rely very heavily on thinking that she had enough name recognition for being the senator there. I don't think that they did enough field work in some of these areas. I don't. I do think mistakes were made. That's neither here nor there. We can do a postmortem on the campaign. What we don't need are outsiders just sitting there purposefully sabotage and shitting on it when some of us are actually trying to do something. And by the way, none of those people have any other better ideas on how to do anything.
No,
you think that the People's Party is going to save us?
And again, it's not that we have a problem with the People's Party, but there isn't this. There's got to be a concrete strategy. Like I was saying earlier, if the People's Party is very serious about what they're doing, there are endless amounts of seats in the United States that the blue seat goes unchallenged, the red seat goes unchallenged. You could easily run and be the other option.
They don't want to do that. They want to be at the top right away. And if I don't get my way, we're going to burn it all down.
And
these
that's
are people
not the answer.
These are people that never sufficiently.
And that is also the thing that you hear constantly. Whether it's from any of the leadership within the party, sans one person who is a friend, and we actually think she does a pretty solid job. But unfortunately, what they're looking at is maybe if we crap on the Democrats hard enough,
they'll all jump ship.
They'll all just jump ship. No,
that's not how
it works. You have to. This is no different than everybody at the top of their lungs screaming, "But Trump." That's not how this works. You have to present a better option.
And you don't.
If you did, people would be running that direction.
No, they're not.
Wow, that works. I like it. Let's do it. But you're not doing that.
Maybe a bunch of hotheads just sitting around being belligerent isn't enough of a draw for people.
Yeah. And you know what? A person that we know down here that catches a lot of fire and gets involved with a lot of nonsense in the political spheres, the one thing that person was correct about is that there is a circular firing squad that is going on with a lot of this online left nonsense.
It's ridiculous.
And he was right about that.
I know.
It's absolutely correct. And so.
And I would like to say this, seriously, because you tell me, and I don't care that people know this, but people who know me know this. What?
What are you alluding to?
About the social media.
Oh, don't. No.
Yes.
No, I'm asking you not to. So anyway, we're not getting anywhere. This is like I said, we're not part of the circular firing squad. That's not what we're going to do. We're not doing that. We're trying to build as many coalitions as we can through a non-corporate, non-partisan labor movement. If you ever want to know, it's almost like messaging. People need to hear your message, make America great again. Well, you can laugh at that and think it's stupid, but remember this. It's still got 70+ million people to vote. And why? Because keep it simple, stupid. And just like people were like, we're going to restore the soul of the nation. Yeah, it sounds stupid. It doesn't mean anything,
means nothing.
But it resonated with people and it worked. So if people want to know what we're about and what we're doing, non-corporate, non-partisan labor movement.
And also, I would love to say kudos to everybody who does talk about me, Because if you do talk about me,
Maybe they'll turn it to our channel.
Well, that's the thing. Even if it's ridiculous nonsense, yeah, I'm getting name recognition. And if you notice, we will give none. We give you none.
Because we don't get involved in that stuff.
But you all go fester amongst yourselves.
I mean, seriously, this is just,
I really want to talk to Tim. I need to talk to Tim.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, that's it. And Ricardo, we're going to leave on this note. This is primarily where Tim's righteous anger comes from. Tim was on the ground, and he was there helping Nina for about a week. We were going to be there for about 3 days. And that, of course, had a lot to do with our travel situation. But we had people from our volunteer organization, a half dozen, as a matter of fact, that were there for almost 6 days. We had people that were there knocking on doors, meeting voters, doing everything they could to help. And it wasn't enough.
No.
But you know
and
what?
Again, we can have the postmortem on where that went wrong. Yeah. That's neither here nor there. If you don't want to swim in the pool, get out of it. You don't need to shit in it for the rest of us.
That's correct. And that is the same thing. And I hate having to bring up his name, but I'm going to bring it up right now.
Don't.
This is the same thing that Tim Canova did. Oh. It's the exact same thing.
You get to say that, but I can't say what I want to say.
The point I'm making is that
don't give him any
his decision. No, but his decision was to do everything he could to sabotage her.
Yeah.
Because his feelings were hurt,
yeah,
and he didn't get his way. So if he can't get his way, then screw everybody
Well, and
else.
That's what these people sound like. Well, she didn't come to our march, so we're not going to help her. And this is why she lost. She should have expected all that big money. Of course she should. They should know that. Well, yeah, but you know what? That doesn't make you a decent person for thinking that's all that great. Because now what you're basically saying is, as much as you think Nina is whatever, you have issues with her, are you saying that Shontel Brown is the better option for the people of Cleveland? Or you're just saying that you don't really give a fuck about the people of Cleveland because you're just more concerned about standing righteous on your stupid pedestal?
Remember this, and this is the important thing to remember about this whole circumstance, is that and I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, when it comes to non-corporate power trying to challenge corporate power, left or right, red or blue, conservative and liberal, will always unite to crush non-corporate power. Always.
But we can't get it together because we have people like this.
And that's why we don't win.
That's why we can't have nice things.
That is why we never get any.
And it isn't because I didn't think it was a good idea for a congressional candidate to go to a Julian Assange telethon. That's not why we can't have nice things. The reason we can't have nice things is that people won't let that go, and they actually think that that has some significance over everything else that we're doing.
Try explaining to people that what happens in New York is a great example. AOC beating Joe Crowley, whether you like AOC, whether you think she's performative, and she is, there's a lot of issues with Alex. But at the end of the day, her victory and everything that has happened thereafter has completely transformed New York City. I don't give a damn if Eric Adams is the mayor. He won a wide open primary race, and he was the Brooklyn borough president for many years. Name recognition and power politics at the top still plays a big role. But if you look at all the city council victories that the Sunrise Movement had, that DSA had, and the biggest baby of them all, India Walton out in Buffalo, change is happening.
Yes.
And there is a universal consensus now with the progressives that Governor Cuomo has to go. And even if he doesn't get impeached or doesn't resign, he's not going to be the governor next time.
No.
And there's an infrastructure in place now that could theoretically get a non-corporate person elected to the governor's mansion. And if that's not enough, the New York Health Act is the path to universal health care.
We need to all get behind that.
That is our focus in 2022. That's where we're going to be focused on. We're focused on that. That is micro and macro all together as one. And that's where everybody's anger and energy should be channeled. We're going to make it happen. It's not going to happen on Capitol Hill, no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you scream. But it can happen in New York.
But that doesn't mean that we crap all over everybody trying to make a difference, because we are making a difference. It's just not fast enough for some people because maybe they're just very entitled that way. I don't know.
If we all agree that universal health care is where we need to go, and I believe it's the signature issue along with the Green New Deal in some form, then we have to collectively recognize that the only way we're going to do it is if we unify. And if we get really serious about what is necessary, I will go to New York. Jen will go to New York. I will knock on doors for the New York Health Act. I don't need to knock on doors for candidates. Don't.
No, but what we are saying, okay, so here's the generational change priorities in coming months. We have October 15th. We're working on a general strike, some sort of action for that. That's a nationwide thing. And then also we will be focusing on seat 20, which is
a wide open primary,
Elsie's old seat. It's
November 2nd. And
yes.
We've got people want to volunteer. There are a couple of amazing non-corporate. We got to stop saying. We got to eliminate the word.
But you know what? It's more than that, though. It isn't just because it also has to be people that want the same things. It really does. So yeah, you might not be corporate, but if you don't believe in everybody has a right to healthcare and everybody deserves a living wage, then just because you're not corporate isn't sufficient. So I mean, it's important, and it's what distinguishes us from the other Dems. But so yeah, guys, we're going to be working heavily on the Florida seat 20. Which is a special election for Alcee Hastings' seat, which is coming up November 2nd. And also September 27th, we have invited all of the candidates for that seat to come on for a roundtable. I don't know who will show up. I don't know who will respond. I do know that Sheila will be there. So if anything, on September 27th, we're going to be having Sheila Surfalis McCormick on. Hopefully we'll get some other people in that race. And we're going to talk about a bunch of things. Healthcare, housing, environment. Last
thing before we go, we need critical thinking. I am not going to put up your message, but what I will say is that yes, Nina did raise more money than Chantel, but that's not counting super PAC money. That's the difference. And the super PAC money that Chantel got was in excess of $3 million
at the end when Nina's money had been spent over the course of 6 to 8 months.
If you were not in Cleveland, and you did not see the billboards that got put up about Nina. And again,
that's not even the 24/7 loop on TV.
That is correct.
You can't even imagine. Every channel, every minute of the day was a picture of Nina Turner doing something and then saying crap about her.
Yeah,
and it's every single ad every single day.
Like I said, we're only going to get where we need to go if we recognize that we are better building this coalition strong.
Because you know what that means. You know what that means.
What?
Why they did that? Because they know.
Oh, they're afraid of
that. And they should be. Yeah. And you know what's so interesting? So I don't know anybody, like if you know Nina, I assure you, she's not remotely deterred. In fact, she's more resolute than ever. And I got to tell you, the people that were really fighting against her, and I don't mean like the left numbnuts. I'm talking about like the establishment people that were really working against her. You people would have been better off letting her win this.
I think you may have.
Because let me tell you,
you may have unleashed an animal now that you're not going to know what to do or how to deal with, because she's the one who will coalesce the people that are looking for a leader, that needs somebody to get behind. And I think she's the one. I've always maintained she's the one.
I spoke with her at length yesterday, and I will tell you.
You shouldn't even talk about it.
No, she actually said I could say this.
Okay. Go ahead.
She is angry. She is resolute, and she's not going anywhere, people. So all I'm saying is hell hath no fury. And I got it for the people and she knows exactly who is where and who did what. And she's nowhere near going away. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%.
So
we'll see you Thursday. But remember, tomorrow we are supporting the Broward Broward Collective, the Broward Mom Collective, and the Trash Pirates in Dania Beach, 5 to 7 p.m. If you want to join GenCorp and lend a hand with doing a beach cleanup and doing a giveaway for I think it's just Broward County students, but this is
our school collection. Well, you mean that's a League of Women Voters.
And we're also going to be stopping by a couple of our stops already. It's not even a week yet, and we already have an overflow of school supplies.
I mean, this is the thing. So, guys, I am the co-chair for the Criminal Justice Committee for the Broward League of Women Voters, which is completely nonpartisan, completely unrelated to all of the things that we do and say here, which is why I don't do this. But we are doing a school drive for school supplies, and we have boxes at several of our small business friends that we've made that are collection boxes for new school supplies for kids in Broward. Unfortunately, we know that our kids do not get anywhere near what they need.
Definitely
our teachers have to spend their own money to decorate their own classrooms. And so anything that we can get to help. And the school supplies are going to be distributed to the people who need it the most, whether it's through my community friends, my friend Mona Lisa Weber and the people that she's working with, and also through who we know are the schools with the most free and reduced lunches. And so, yeah, if you guys check that out, but that's through the league. I don't, that's a League of Women Voters thing, people, separate.
We really appreciate you guys as always. We know that we're not the biggest channel in the world, but
we're not the smallest.
We're not the smallest,
That's
but
what
we're trying.
We're not the smallest.
But we're trying really hard. Please, if you can't support us, go to patreon.com/generational.
We'll be sending out a whole bunch of stickers this week.
Yeah, apparently we've got a bunch of new patrons.
I do it like, every month I'll do a mailing. So it doesn't happen the minute that you subscribe, but it does.
Yes.
happen.
Well, again, we're going to keep trying. And again, we're only going to do it honestly. We're not going to do a clickbait show. We're going to do an honest show because that's what is necessary. And I wish that 150 people, 200 people were watching live at one time, but we're always going to try.
And
we're
also often competing with other people. Like Thursday nights, we compete with Katie. I mean, I don't know who's on tonight, but I think Tim might be on again tonight. So, it is what it is. You're competing with who you're competing.
But that's the beauty of live stream become podcast. So if you want to become a supporter, we really appreciate it. If you're in the Broward County area and you want to lend a hand with a great community outreach event tomorrow, we hope to see you at Dania Beach.
Is it at the pier?
At the pier.
Meeting at the Dania Beach Pier.
To 7 p.m. It's for a great cause. We'll be there, and we'll see you Thursday night for more generational change.
Bye, y'all.